You think I trapped you for your money?" Karen's voice sliced through the ranch office like a blade. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was burning. "I gave you the most vulnerable part of me, Preston. And you think I did it for a check?" She pressed her trembling hand to her stomach. Flat now, but not for long. Preston didn't answer. The rain slammed against the windows behind him. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. He was a man built by land, cattle, and cash, but he had no idea how to hold a woman like her. "I'm pregnant. With your child," she said, her voice breaking only once. "And all you see is a trap?" He blinked. That Texas pride in his chest? It was crumbling. Fast. Karen didn't wait. She turned for the door. "You want proof I didn't trap you?" She flung over her shoulder. "Watch me raise this child alone. If that scene hit you like it hit Preston, hit the like button and drop a comment. It tells YouTube. This story is worth sharing." The sun hadn't fully risen over central Texas, but Preston Horace was already up, as always. He moved through his ranch house like a man on autopilot, buttoning his crisp shirt, pouring black coffee, staring out at the land he'd ruled for decades. Thousands of acres, dozens of workers, and more money than he'd ever spend. Yet every morning felt the same, silent, cold, and too long. His boots hit the wooden floor with weight. Downstairs, his housekeeper nodded quietly as he passed. No one asked him how he slept. No one dared. Outside, the ranch was alive. Horses galloped. Ranch hands shouted over engines and livestock. Preston walked through it all like a ghost with a clipboard, checking inventory, running operations, but never connecting. Everyone respected him. No one knew him. He ate lunch alone on the porch, his plate untouched half the time. He checked emails, scrolled through cattle reports, rejected dinner invitations. When the sun dipped, he sat back with a glass of bourbon, eyes fixed on the horizon like it might bring something new. Nothing ever did. At night, he stared at the empty side of his bed. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was loud, and even with all his power, he couldn't shut it off. Preston wasn't just living alone. He was surviving alone, day after day, year after year. She used to sit right there. That same rocking chair on the far end of the porch. Preston had never moved it. The cushion was faded now, but in his mind, he still saw her on it, laughing, reading, teasing him for working too hard. Her name was Jolene. They were supposed to get married the summer she died. He still remembered the sound of her boots tapping down the hallway, the way she hummed while stirring her morning tea, the way she'd lean against the fence and ask, "When are you gonna slow down, cowboy?" She died on the I-20. A semi ran a red light in Fort Worth. She didn't make it to the hospital. Preston had been in the barn when the call came. He dropped the phone, didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. He buried her in a small plot near the east gate of the ranch. No marble stone, just wood and Jolene's name carved by hand. Every year, on the day she passed, he placed sunflowers there. That never changed, but time kept moving. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom drawer. Her favorite book still on the nightstand. People told him to clear it out, but he never did. Preston loved her more than any land or title. He never got to say goodbye, and that regret stayed longer than the grief ever did. The board meetings weren't friendly anymore. They used to start with small talk, weather, cattle prices, oil leases. Now, the men across the table barely looked at Preston without reminding him of his age. "You've built something incredible, Preston," said Hank Rollins, the lead attorney. "But legacy needs a name behind it." "What you mean is, I need a child," Preston replied flatly. "Well," another board member coughed, "you're not getting any younger. Investors are asking questions. You don't have a successor." Preston didn't flinch. "My land is the successor. That won't calm buyers if you drop dead tomorrow," Hank said, too blunt for his own good. "You have no family, no contingency. That makes people nervous." They weren't wrong. The Horace name held weight in Texas. Generations expected to see it passed down. But he had no brothers, no cousins worth trusting, and no child. After the meeting, Preston sat in his truck for a long time. He didn't turn the key. He didn't move. Just stared out the windshield while the weight of what they'd said settled on him. He never wanted to be the man chasing fatherhood for the sake of paperwork. But the ranch couldn't protect itself forever. What haunted him wasn't their pressure. It was the truth he already knew. He was running out of time, and no amount of cattle or cash could fill that space. After Jolene died, Preston swore off love. Women came and went over the years, some drawn to his name, others to his wealth, but none got close. He kept every relationship surface level, guarded behind a polite smile and a thick wall of silence. People tried to set him up. Old friends, business partners. Even his ranch foreman once joked, "You need a woman to tame you again." Preston never laughed. He told himself he was too busy, too focused, too old to start again. Truth was, he didn't want another heartbreak. Not one that deep, not one he couldn't drink away. Every holiday passed the same. Birthdays, quiet, no one called, no one to cook for, no arms waiting at the door. Just him and the land. But the silence had changed. It no longer gave him peace, it pulled at him, made the nights longer, the meals colder, the porch emptier. He still kept his distance from the idea of dating. What would I even talk about? He once muttered to himself. Cattle feed and bad sleep? But one morning, staring out at a sunrise that looked just like every other, he felt a deep ache he couldn't ignore. Not for a lover, not for company, for connection. It wasn't about proving anything to his board. It was about not dying with his boots on and no one there to take them off. It was a Thursday afternoon when Preston gave in. Not to a friend, not to pressure, but to himself. He was driving past Dallas after a supply meeting, mind heavy, stomach empty. His driver suggested stopping at the Galleria Mall to grab a new pair of boots from a custom leather store. Normally he'd say no. This time he shrugged. One stop. The mall buzzed with weekend shoppers. Preston didn't fit in. Boots too dusty, shirt too plain, face too known. Some recognized him. Most didn't. He kept walking until he saw a small boutique near the exit. It wasn't the clothes that made him pause. It was the woman inside. She wasn't smiling. She was lifting a heavy box off the floor for an older CO worker who struggled to bend down. Her movements were strong, purposeful. She didn't notice him at first, but when she stood up and caught him staring, her eyes narrowed fast. "What?" she asked, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. Preston tilted his head. "You always help folks like that?" She crossed her arms. "Why? You got a problem with it, cowboy?" He chuckled. Not because she was rude, but because she was real. It wasn't a date, wasn't even a plan, but something in him whispered, "Ask her name." And for the first time in years, Preston listened. Karen adjusted the waist of her work apron and checked her reflection in the boutique side mirror. Her locks were pulled back into a neat bun, and the soft bronze of her skin shimmered gently under the store lights. She looked calm, professional, but inside, she was tired. Not just the kind of tired that came from long shifts and short paychecks, but the kind that came from years of being overlooked and misunderstood. At 35, Karen had learned how to keep moving no matter what. Life hadn't offered her much softness. She didn't grow up rich or sheltered. She wasn't anyone's first choice. She had done college, worked odd jobs, chased dreams and let them go when rent was due. Dallas wasn't cheap, and being an independent woman in this city meant she had to stay 5 steps ahead of struggle. The boutique where she worked wasn't fancy, but it had its share of wealthy customers. She didn't sell clothes. She restocked, managed inventory, fixed displays. While other women sprayed perfume and smiled for commission, Karen was in the back room counting boxes and folding outfits no one thanked her for, but she didn't complain. She wasn't here for praise. Today the air was humid and foot traffic was slow. Her elderly co-worker, Ruth, who had worked at the boutique longer than Karen had, been in Dallas, struggled to bend down and lift a stack of incoming inventory. "I've got it, Miss Ruth," Karen said, already crouching to lift the heavy box. "You're a blessing," the woman smiled, her hands resting on her lower back. Karen nodded. "I know." She wasn't cocky. She was simply aware of her worth. She hoisted the box up and carried it across the sales floor to the back. Her arms burned, but she didn't flinch. She caught a few stares from some shoppers, women wearing luxury heels and swinging branded bags. She didn't care. She'd been stared at before, for her height, her skin tone, her presence. None of it shook her. When she turned around and headed back for another box, her eyes locked briefly with a tall man standing outside the entrance. His eyes didn't just look at her, they studied her. She kept walking. She had work to do. Preston Horace wasn't the kind of man to wander malls. His boots clicked awkwardly against polished tile floors, drawing side eyes from people who knew he didn't belong in this setting. Most men his age would have sent an assistant, but today, he came alone. He needed new boots, sure, but more than that, he needed to get out of his own head. He walked through the Galleria like a man half-distracted scanning store, windows with faint interest, until a sudden movement caught his eye. A woman, tall and toned, hoisted a heavy box from the boutique floor without asking for help. Her form was precise, steady, no wince, no struggle. She lifted like she had something to prove, or like she'd been doing it her whole life. Preston slowed. The first thing he noticed was her back. Straight, strong, confident. Then, the curve of her shoulders. Then her face. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, skin that looked like melted bronze under the overhead lights. She didn't wear much makeup, but she didn't need to. Her eyes were focused on the task, not on who might be watching. She wasn't doing it for attention. She was doing it because it needed to be done. That's what held Preston in place. It wasn't just her looks. It was the effort, the silence in her work, the dignity in her movements. She had the kind of presence that didn't ask for space. It took space and owned it. He watched as she carried the box with ease, her arms flexing beneath the fabric of her shirt. The older woman beside her, someone she clearly worked with, smiled in thanks. The tall woman didn't wait for praise. She turned right around and reached for another. Preston didn't realize he had stopped walking until a teenager bumped into him. "Sorry, sir," the boy mumbled. Preston nodded, stepping aside, his eyes still fixed on the woman. She didn't glance up at him again, didn't try to catch his eye. She was too busy doing the kind of work most people overlooked. And Preston, a man who'd built an empire with his hands, suddenly felt like he'd forgotten what real effort looked like. Preston wasn't the type to act on impulse. He didn't chase women, never had to. But something about this one, the way she moved, the way she worked, got under his skin fast. He stepped into the boutique without thinking twice. The door chimed. Karen glanced up briefly from the second box she was arranging. She didn't smile, didn't welcome him, just nodded once before going back to her task. "Ma'am," Preston said, tipping his head slightly. Karen didn't look up. "Sales rep is on break. Try again in 15. He raised a brow, amused. "I'm not here for a suit." "Then you're standing in the wrong store," she shot back, tightening the tie on a display mannequin. "I saw you lifting those boxes," he said. She paused, slowly turned. "And? You shouldn't be carrying all that alone." Her eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for help." Preston smirked. "Most women would have." Karen stepped forward, folding her arms. "Most women in here don't come from where I come from." Preston felt the shift in her tone. Firm, not rude. Direct, not interested. "Well," he said, "respect for that. You following me around to say that?" He chuckled, more out of surprise than humor. "No, ma'am, I just thought. You thought I'd be impressed that a man with a fancy watch saw me lift a box?" He glanced at his wrist. Leather banded, silver-edged, probably worth more than her monthly rent. She wasn't impressed. He cleared his throat. "You always this friendly to strangers?" "Only the ones who stare like they're scouting a prize bull." The jab was clean. Preston couldn't even be mad. She was sharp, unapologetic, not looking for approval. "Well," he said again, tipping his hat slightly. "You've got bite." Karen tilted her head. "And you've got boots. Use them." He let out a quiet breath. "Fair enough." She turned her back on him without hesitation. The conversation was over, but something lingered in the air, a quiet heat, unspoken tension. Preston walked out without saying another word. He didn't even buy the boots. Karen didn't spare him a second glance after he left. She returned to her task, adjusting folded tops on the display table and pushing the box neatly under the rack. Ruth gave her a curious glance from the counter. "You know who that was?" the older woman asked, voice low. Karen didn't pause. "Don't care." Ruth chuckled. "That's Preston Horace. Owns land from Dallas to Houston. They say he's worth a couple $100 million. Karen shrugged. "Then he can afford a new attitude." Ruth laughed harder now, shaking her head. "Girl, one of these days you're going to talk yourself out of a husband." Karen stood up straight, dusted her hands, and gave Ruth a dry look. "If I wanted a husband, I'd be looking for one. I came here to work." She didn't hate men, But she didn't chase them either, especially not ones who walked into stores like they owned the ground under their feet. The way he watched her, it wasn't disrespectful. It was probing, curious, like he was trying to figure her out. She wasn't interested in being someone's mystery. She'd spent too much of her life proving she wasn't weak, wasn't easy, wasn't a charity case. And she wasn't about to let some cowboy with a rich man's drawl reduce her to another flirtation. She'd heard the kind of talk men like him used. Sweet when they wanted you, sharp when they didn't. Karen had dated once or twice, but her energy was sacred now. She'd earned her independence. No man was going to come along, flash a smile and a wallet, and expect her to fold. Especially not one who thought noticing her strength gave him permission to comment on it. Let the man walk away. Let him wonder. She had rent due, a shift to finish, and no time to waste. Karen straightened the last display on the shelf, checked her phone, and tucked it back in her pocket. 5 more hours before closing. Then the bus ride home. Then leftovers and laundry. Men like him didn't exist in her world, and she had no intention of stepping into his. Preston hadn't been dismissed like that in years. He walked out of the boutique slower than he'd entered, boots striking softer against the tile. The crowd around him moved as usual, shoppers, tourists, store clerks on break, but he wasn't focused on any of them. His mind was still in that shop, still with her. That woman didn't flinch, didn't stutter, didn't care who he was. Preston had spent a lifetime watching people bend under his name, his wealth, his influence. She didn't blink. She shut him down and moved on like he was just another man wasting her time. He couldn't stop thinking about her eyes. Fierce, clear, unapologetic. She spoke like she wasn't trying to impress anyone. Like her peace didn't depend on approval. That did something to him. He made his way to the parking garage where his driver waited. "Find the boots?" the man asked, opening the door. "No," Preston said, sliding into the back seat. "Didn't need 'em." As the car pulled off, he leaned back, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the road ahead. But his thoughts stayed behind. He wasn't used to being curious about people. Business, yes. Land, sure. But a person? A woman? She had shut the door on the conversation, but not on the mystery. He didn't even know her name. Didn't know if she was single, if she had kids, if she'd laugh when she wasn't annoyed. Didn't know anything about her, except that she wasn't impressed by money, and she wasn't interested in flattery. That alone made her unforgettable. "She said I had boots," he muttered, the words lingering in the air. "Told me to use them." He chuckled softly. She was bold, strong, grounded, and she dismissed him like he was nobody. Most men would have walked away and left it there, but Preston wasn't most men. He didn't chase after what came easy. He paid attention to what made him feel something. And she had cracked something open in him he hadn't felt in years. He'd be back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but that woman had gotten under his skin. And Preston Horace never left things unfinished. 3 days passed before Preston showed up again. This time, he didn't stop at the doorway or stand staring. He walked in like a man with purpose and grabbed the first shirt he saw, a powder blue button-down, 2 sizes too small. Karen noticed him the moment he stepped inside, but she didn't break stride. She was folding jeans on a side table, half watching him fumble through racks like a lost tourist. He didn't speak, didn't flirt, just browsed, badly. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Sometimes in boots, sometimes in loafers, always wearing that quiet smirk, like he knew she was watching him as much as he was watching her. The store clerks loved him. One even posted a photo with him on Instagram captioning it, "Preston Horace, y'all, still fine and still rich." The post got dozens of likes. Karen didn't care. She kept her distance. But she noticed the way he asked about fabric like he cared, how he nodded along as the salesgirls rambled about sizing and style, how he always ended up near the stockroom where she spent most of her time. He never bought anything. He picked up ties he didn't need, held up blazers like he was going to a gala, examined cufflinks like he wore suits daily. He didn't. He wasn't there for the clothes. He was there for her. And Karen knew it. He never said it outright, never crossed the line, never got too close. But the repetition, the quiet presence, said enough. Most men would have gotten the message and moved on. Preston didn't. He was consistent, annoyingly so, and with every return, the air between them tightened. a push and pull that neither of them spoke about but both could feel. The boutique had become more than just her job. Now, it was a stage. And Preston? He had taken a front row seat without buying a ticket. The 5th time he walked in that month, Karen snapped. He was pretending to examine a tan linen shirt, running his fingers along the collar like he might actually buy it this time. She didn't move from behind the register, just watched him quietly, eyes narrowed. When he picked up another jacket he had no intention of trying on, she pushed off the counter and made her way over. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "What do you want?" she asked plainly, stopping right in front of him. Preston looked up, caught off guard but only for a second. "Excuse me? You're not here for clothes," she said, arms folded. "And I'm not here for games, so what do you want?" He blinked. The other employees fell silent nearby, pretending not to eavesdrop. Preston set the jacket back on the rack slowly, meeting her eyes. "I like the way you carry yourself." Karen scoffed. "That's not a reason to haunt a woman's workplace." "I'm not haunting you." "Could have fooled me." He chuckled softly. "Fair enough. But if you must know, I find you interesting." Karen tilted her head. "Is that supposed to impress me?" "No," he said. "It's supposed to be honest." She didn't smile. "Men who find me interesting usually want to see how quickly I'll fold once the gifts and compliments start rolling in. You think I'm here to buy you? I think you're used to women falling into your lap. I'm not one of them." The tension hung between them, quiet but thick. Preston held her gaze. "I'm not looking for a servant or a charity case. I'm just looking—" "Well," Karen said, stepping back, "look somewhere else." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there with nothing but the sound of the store music playing low in the background. That could have ended it, but it didn't. She'd asked him what he wanted. Now, he needed to figure out how to answer that, for real. Preston waited a full week before he came back. This time, he didn't pretend. He didn't pick up any jackets, didn't walk around the store like he was lost. He walked straight to Karen, who was arranging a new window display. She saw him coming and didn't flinch. "You're back," she said flatly, without looking at him. "I figured I'd stop dancing around it," Preston replied, resting a hand on the glass panel. "Have dinner with me." Karen froze for just a second, then went back to straightening the sign. "No. No? You heard me." He let out a small breath. "It's just dinner. With a man I don't trust." "No, thank you." Preston raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He crossed his arms. "You're judging me already?" "I'm reading the signs," she said, finally turning to face him. "Men like you show up with charm and follow through with assumptions. I'm not interested in either." He nodded slowly. "So you won't even give me a chance?" "I'm not in the business of entertaining men who think a woman like me should feel lucky to be asked." "That's not what I think. It's how you came in," she said, with the slow stroll, the watching, the smirking. "You act like I'm a puzzle. I'm not. I'm a person." "I just thought—" "Stop thinking," she cut in. "You either want to get to know me or you want a story to tell your friends." Preston stayed quiet. Karen grabbed her clipboard and walked past him. "You're not the first man to ask me out like he's doing me a favor." "I wasn't doing you a favor," he said, voice low. "I was asking—" "Well, now you've got your answer," she replied, already halfway to the back room. She didn't pause, didn't turn back, didn't give him space to explain. Preston stood there, alone in a store full of people. She had said no without flinching. And for the first time in years, he didn't have a comeback. The whispers started over whiskey. Preston was at a private dinner in Dallas, seated with two men he'd known for decades, both older, both married, both loud. The kind of men who smiled big in public but said too much in private. "You still sniffing around that girl at the Galleria?" one of them asked, sliding a glass across the table. Preston took a slow sip. "Didn't know my business was up for discussion." "It ain't a secret, brother," the other said. "You've been seen there more than you've been seen at your own ranch lately." "She's pretty," the first man added. "But come on, Preston." "You know what that is." Preston set his drink down. "What do you mean?" "You know how these women operate," he said. "They spot a lonely man with money and play the slow game. Make you think they're different. Until the checks start disappearing." "She won't even take a lunch from me," Preston replied, voice calm. "That's part of the act," the second man said, chuckling. They reel you in by acting like they don't want anything. Next thing you know, your name's on her rent and her kids' tuition. Preston stayed quiet, but the words hung there. He didn't believe them. Not fully. But the doubt, it slid in like a splinter. Later that night, alone in his truck, the conversation echoed louder than it should have. Gold digger. He hated the word. Karen hadn't done anything to deserve it. She was blunt, guarded, hard-working. He'd seen women chase status. Karen didn't move like that. But those men had planted something dangerous in his head. Doubt twisted around curiosity. And Preston, though proud and seasoned, wasn't immune to it. His guard crept up higher than it had been in years. And suddenly, he found himself watching her a little too closely, listening for the wrong things, second-guessing the honesty in her no, not because she did anything wrong, but because someone said something he wasn't strong enough to ignore. The next time Preston walked into the boutique, he didn't come empty-handed. He brought a small, sleek bag from a luxury store 2 doors down. Inside was a silk scarf, deep brown and gold, the kind of shade that would glow against Karen's skin. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cheap. It was thoughtful. He didn't toss it at her, didn't make a show of it. He waited until she was alone, rearranging a shoe rack near the dressing rooms. "Thought this might suit you," he said, holding the bag out, his voice steady. Karen glanced at the bag, then at him. Her eyes didn't soften. "I don't take gifts from men I've already turned down." "It's not a bribe," he replied. She shook her head. "It doesn't have to be. You think that scarf is just fabric, but to me it's a test, a door you want me to open so you can feel like you've got a way in." Preston didn't speak. Karen pushed the bag back toward him. "You want to impress me? Try listening. I was just trying to." "You were trying to make me owe you something," she said. "Even if you don't realize it." He stepped back. Her tone wasn't angry. It was firm, clear, final. Another day, he sent flowers through the boutique's front desk. The bouquet sat in the break room untouched. Karen didn't even take them home. One of the younger workers teased her. "Girl, if you don't want 'em, I'll take the flowers." Karen smiled without humor. "You can have them. I didn't ask for petals. I asked for respect." Even when Preston tried subtle things, opening the door, offering coffee, complimenting her style, Karen met every gesture with silence or a polite nod that made it clear she wasn't moved. He wasn't used to this kind of woman. She couldn't be bought. Not with kindness. Not with pretty things. The more he tried, the more she reminded him she wasn't interested in being impressed. If he wanted her attention, he'd have to come correct, because charm was a game she didn't play. Preston didn't mean to test her, but that's what he did. It started with small things. The kind you tell yourself are harmless. The kind that reveal more about you than the person you're testing. He dropped details in their few conversations. Nothing direct. Just small bits of bait. "I had to fly out to Houston last night," he'd mention casually. "Had to sign a contract worth 7 figures. My team was in a panic." Karen would nod, disinterested. Hope they figured it out. No wide eyes. No curious follow-up. Not even a question about what kind of business he ran. Another time, he stood near the register flipping through his wallet, letting a platinum card flash under the light. Karen barely looked at it. "We take all cards," she said, eyes on the receipt printer. Still, nothing. So he tried something else. He left his truck parked outside the store, keys in hand, ranch logo gleaming on the side. It was the kind of truck that turned heads, armored, polished, easily 6 figures. He positioned it where she'd see it during her lunch break. Karen walked right past it without a pause. She didn't even glance. It unsettled him, not because she failed his test, but because her indifference poked at something deep in his chest. He'd always told himself he hated shallow women, but now that he'd found a woman who didn't flinch at his wealth, he realized he didn't quite know how to connect without it. The real test wasn't about her. It was about whether he could show up without the money, without the image, without the name. And he wasn't sure he liked the answer. He told himself it was just curiosity, that he was trying to figure out what kind of person she was. But deep down he already knew. Karen had no use for performance. She was the same with or without praise, with or without attention, with or without a man trying to impress her. Every test he gave her, she passed without knowing it was happening, and it made Preston feel more exposed than powerful. Preston lay awake most nights, staring at the ceiling of his ranch house with one question looping in his mind. What is she hiding? He couldn't shake the pull he felt toward Karen. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was the way she looked at him like he was just a man, not a legacy. The way she didn't smile unless she meant it. The way she said no without blinking. She had the strength of someone who'd been through too much and survived without asking for applause. And that drew him in. But it also made him hesitate, because he didn't know her story. She never offered it, never hinted at pain or dreams or family. She kept their interactions surface level, short. She didn't flirt, didn't share, didn't ask about his life, unless it was directly tied to what she had to do at work. And yet, when she walked past, his chest tightened. When she laughed, rare, brief, but rich, he replayed it in his head for hours. He didn't want to feel this way. Not again. Not at his age. Not after losing Jolene. So the doubt crept in. Maybe she was playing the long game. Maybe her distance was strategy. Maybe her refusal to accept his gifts was just part of the act, the hook. She wouldn't be the first to fake dignity to catch a bigger fish. His attraction deepened, but so did the noise in his head. He found himself looking for cracks. Did she hesitate when he mentioned money? Did her eyes light up when he pulled up in a nicer truck? Did she linger a second too long near his watch? He hated himself for thinking that way. But he didn't stop. Karen, meanwhile, kept being Karen. Kind when necessary. Quiet by choice. Uninterested in proving anything. And that confused him more than it comforted him. Because the woman he was falling for felt too good to be true. And Preston Horace had lived long enough to know when something felt too real to break you, it often did. It happened after closing. Karen had stayed late to finish the new window display. Preston, uninvited, appeared at the entrance as she turned off the front lights. He leaned against the doorframe like he belonged there, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. Karen paused, keys in hand. "You waiting for someone?" "You," he said flatly. She sighed. "You need to stop showing up like this." Preston stepped inside. "I need to talk." Karen didn't move. Talk or accuse? His jaw clenched. "That depends. On what?" He looked at her, really looked, and something in his eyes cracked. "You ever going to tell me the truth?" Karen blinked. "About what?" "Why you've been dodging me, blocking every attempt, brushing me off. What are you hiding, Karen?" Her stare sharpened. "Is this what you came here to do? Cross-examine me like I'm running a scam?" "I'm trying to understand you." "No, Preston," she said, voice rising. "You're trying to catch me in a lie that doesn't exist." He stepped closer. "You can't blame me for asking. You've barely told me anything about yourself. You act like I'm a threat." She shook her head. "Because I've met men like you before. You say you want honesty, but the second you don't get access, you call it a red flag." "I never said that. You didn't have to." The air between them turned sharp. Her breath quickened, but she didn't back down. "You think I'm some grifter playing a long game?" she asked, chest rising. "You think I'd sell my dignity for a man I barely know?" His silence answered for him. Karen laughed bitterly, eyes watering but fierce. "You don't trust me, Preston. You never did. And the worst part is, you pretend you want something real, when the truth is you're still holding on to your money like it's the only thing that makes you worth anything." That landed hard. He didn't respond, because she wasn't wrong. She turned toward the door, her keys trembling in her hand. "You wanted the truth? Here it is. I've never used a man in my life, and I won't start now." Karen pushed the boutique door open and stepped out into the thick Texas night. The heat clung to her skin, but she didn't care. Her chest ached, not from the temperature, but from the weight of everything she'd held back for weeks. She didn't look behind her, didn't slow her steps, but she heard the door swing open again. "Karen, don't," she snapped, her voice sharp, her footsteps faster. She crossed the parking lot without a glance. She needed distance. She needed air. She needed to breathe without feeling like someone was questioning her worth. Preston's boots hit the concrete behind her, steady but unsure. "I wasn't trying to insult you," he called out. Karen stopped. She didn't turn around. "You weren't trying to," she said, her voice tight. "Then what do you call it?" "I don't know." He snapped back, louder than he intended. "I don't know what I'm doing with you. I just know I can't stop thinking about you, and I hate that I don't know if it's real." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were glassy, but her jaw was locked. "You hate not being in control. That's your problem." Preston stepped closer. "You're right. Karen blinked, startled by the sudden honesty. "I've built my entire life keeping people at arm's length," he said. "And you make that impossible." She looked away. "I've tried to stay away, tried to forget you. But I can't." The vulnerability in his voice wasn't practiced. It wasn't smooth. It was raw, scraped up from somewhere he rarely showed. Karen swallowed hard. "Then why treat me like a threat?" "Because I'm scared," he said plainly. "You're not like anyone I've met, and that scares the hell out of me." The parking lot went quiet again. Even the cars seemed to give them space. Preston stepped forward, slower this time. "You were walking away, and I couldn't let you go without saying that." She looked at him, torn between anger and something softer. Her chest rose and fell. "Then say the rest," she said, "because I'm tired of being the only one laying it all out." Preston took a breath. Not a shallow one, not something quick to fill the silence. A real breath, the kind you take when you're about to say something you've never told another soul. "I've been burned before," he began, voice low. "Not by one woman, by many. Women who saw the ranch, the press, the bank account, and thought they could play a part long enough to stay." Karen didn't speak. "I had one woman fake a pregnancy just to keep my attention," he continued, eyes on the ground now. "Another stole from my home, and the worst one, she waited until I was sick, then tried to get her name on my will." Karen crossed her arms, her gaze steady. "And you think I'm one of them?" Preston looked up. "No. I think I'm afraid you're not." That stopped her. He stepped closer, slow and measured. "You don't ask for anything. You don't chase me. You don't flinch at the lifestyle. That should give me peace. But instead, it makes me wonder when the other shoe's going to drop." Karen's jaw tightened. "You mistake self-respect for strategy." "I know that," he said quickly. "Now I do. But my guard goes up anyway. It's automatic. I've spent so long protecting what I've built that I forgot how to let anyone close. And yet, you want me close." He nodded. "That's the problem." She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders shifting slightly. "I'm not here to save you from your past," she said. "And I'm not here to prove I'm not like them." "I don't want you to prove anything," he replied. "I just need you to know why I've acted the way I have." Karen held his gaze. "I'm trying," he added, softer. "I just don't know how to do this without waiting for it to go wrong." Her expression finally cracked, just a little. Not enough to melt, just enough to pause. "You want honesty?" she asked. He nodded. "I've been hurt too. But I didn't let it turn me into someone who punishes the next person." That landed deep. He took it. And for once, he didn't argue. He just stood there, stripped of ego, waiting for whatever came next. Karen stood there, still as the summer night, eyes locked on Preston. What he'd said, that he didn't know how to stop waiting for things to go wrong, hit her in a place she didn't want to admit was still sore. Her arms dropped to her sides. "You think I haven't been used?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I've been taken for granted by men who claimed they loved me, lied to by men who said they'd stay, left behind when they got bored." Preston didn't interrupt. He listened, his face drawn. Karen took a slow step back. "But I never let that make me bitter. I learned, I grew, I worked harder." Her voice cracked, and she turned away for a second, pressing her lips together, willing the tears to stay back. Preston moved closer, cautiously. "You don't have to hold it in with me." She turned, her eyes sharp. "Yes, I do. Because the minute I show too much, the world decides I'm weak. The minute I trust too much, I get burned. I can't afford to fall for someone who doubts me before I've even given them a reason." "I'm trying not to doubt you. You shouldn't have to try," she snapped. "You either see me or you don't." The tears came anyway. She hated it. She swiped them away with the back of her hand, standing tall again. "I don't need saving, Preston. I need someone who knows how to stand beside me without questioning if I belong there." He nodded slowly. "I hear you." Karen looked away, breathing hard. "I never expected you to chase me," she admitted. "But I didn't expect you to look at me like a risk either." "I was wrong," he said. "But I'm still here." She glanced at him, eyes full of pain, strength, fire. "You don't get to hurt me and then walk me into a happy ending just because you're ready now," she said. "I don't want a happy ending," he answered. "I want something real." Karen looked at him for a long moment. She didn't smile, didn't move closer, but she didn't walk away this time. And that was more than he'd earned. The night air hung thick with heat, but neither of them moved to leave. Preston looked up at the sky, deep black, stars scattered wide like someone had tossed diamonds across velvet. Out here, far from city lights, everything felt louder, the wind brushing through dry grass, the cicadas humming, the sound of two people standing too close to walk away. Karen finally exhaled and stepped past him, walking toward the edge of the lot where the streetlight flickered. She paused near a patch of gravel, arms wrapped loosely around herself. Preston followed, slower now. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She looked over her shoulder at him. Her eyes weren't soft, but they weren't hard anymore either. "You ever stand in the middle of something and feel like you're holding your breath?" she asked. He stepped beside her. "Every damn day." She glanced at him. "I thought it was just me." "No," he said. "It's both of us." A long silence settled between them. Not the kind that pushes people apart, but the kind that pulls tension to the surface, layer by layer. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand brushed hers, rough, weathered skin against warm, smooth fingers. The smallest contact lit something between them. Karen inhaled, sharp and shallow, but didn't break it. Their hands locked gently. He turned to face her, stepping in until their bodies nearly touched. Her eyes met his, questioning but no longer defensive. "I haven't earned anything from you," Preston said quietly. "But if I could hold you right now, I wouldn't take it for granted." Her breath caught, not because of the words, but because she knew they were honest. Slowly she reached up and pressed her palm against his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. Neither of them blinked. Everything that had been buried, anger, fear, need, restraint, rose like steam between them. She leaned forward first, just a little. He met her halfway. Their lips brushed. Once, then again, then deeper. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was slow, deliberate, like two people learning a language they never thought they'd speak again. And under the open Texas sky, something gave way. Not completely, but enough. By the time they reached his truck, neither spoke. Karen didn't ask where they were going. She didn't need to. She knew. He opened the passenger door gently, waited until she was inside, then rounded to the driver's side and slid in beside her. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, the kind of quiet that held too much inside to say aloud. His hand rested on the gear shift. Hers lay in her lap. They didn't touch, but the energy between them pulsed, soft, steady, impossible to ignore. When they reached the ranch, the porch light flicked on automatically. Preston didn't rush. He stepped out, walked around, opened her door again like it mattered. Karen stepped down, slowly, every step heavy with tension and release. He led her through the front door. The house smelled of leather and cedar wood. She took it in briefly, walls lined with old photographs, boots near the door, silence filling every corner. He turned to her. She didn't wait. Karen stepped forward, took his face in both hands, and kissed him again. This time deeper, slower, filled with everything she'd held back for weeks. Preston responded with a hunger that wasn't reckless. His hands were rough but careful, moving along her waist, up her spine. Her breath hitched, but she didn't stop. He undressed her gently. No rush, no pressure. He took his time memorizing her skin, her curves, the strength in her body. Karen didn't just lie back and wait. She matched him, touched him like she had questions, and wanted answers with her fingertips. Traced the scars on his back, pressed her lips against his shoulder like it carried weight she was willing to share. Their bodies met slowly, no flash, no firestorm, just two people making space for pain and want to exist at once. He whispered her name like it meant more than desire. She moaned his like she hadn't let anyone hear her voice like that in years. They moved together, not rushed, not forced, but in rhythm, like something broken learning how to hold itself again. And when it was done, she lay against him, his heartbeat steady in her ear. Neither spoke, because in that moment, nothing else needed to be said. The room had settled into silence, not the kind that followed exhaustion, but the kind that revealed everything left unsaid. Karen lay on her side, arm draped across Preston's chest. Her fingers traced absent lines along his skin, but her mind wasn't resting. Her body had given in, but her heart hadn't followed all the way. Preston stared at the ceiling. One hand rested behind his head, the other loosely wrapped around her waist. He didn't speak. Karen finally broke the quiet. "This doesn't change what I said." His brow furrowed slightly. I know. She sat up just a little, leaning on her elbow. The sheets slipped down her back. Her voice was calm, but it cut straight. People think sleeping with someone means you trust them. It doesn't. Preston turned to face her. You think I don't know that? Karen looked at him, not with affection, but with clarity. You've got history that made you guarded. So do I, she said. But what we just shared, that was a choice I made, not a promise. He nodded slowly. She reached over and touched his jaw, firm but not harsh. I let you in because I felt something, but if you doubt me again, if you ever speak to me like I'm beneath you, I'll be gone, for good. Her words weren't loud, but they carried more weight than anything she'd said before. I don't need a savior. I don't need a hero, she continued. I need a man who sees me clearly and chooses me without second-guessing. Preston swallowed hard. You have that? Karen tilted her head. Not yet. But maybe. She lay back down beside him, her head on his chest, her breath steadying. Her hand slid over his heart. Don't make me regret this, Preston. He closed his eyes. That sentence carried more force than the act itself, more than the kiss, more than the moment under the stars, because it wasn't just about the night. It was about everything that came next, and whether or not he was ready to be the man she needed, not just the man she touched. Preston ran his hand down the curve of Karen's back, skin still warm against his fingertips. Her warning still echoed in the quiet space between them, heavier than anything they had said before or during the night. Don't make me regret this. He had never been spoken to like that after intimacy, not with that level of truth, not with that kind of power, and he had never wanted so badly to live up to someone's expectations. He shifted slightly, pulling her closer. You won't, he said. I promise you. Karen didn't respond. Maybe she didn't believe it. Maybe she'd heard too many promises from men who meant them in the moment, only to fold when it got hard. Preston felt her stillness and mistook it for peace. But Karen wasn't at peace. She was alert. Her body rested, but her heart was still watching him, waiting to see if the man who said the right words could also follow through with the right actions. Preston, meanwhile, felt proud of what he'd said. He meant it, or thought he did, but deep inside the fear still lingered. He hadn't destroyed his suspicion. He'd buried it, just deep enough to get through the night. He told himself he trusted her, but the voices, those men at the dinner table, the old betrayals, the past he hadn't healed from, they were still there, whispering that this was too good, too fast, too dangerous. Still, he kissed the top of her head. Still, he whispered, I'm not going anywhere. And he believed it. For now, but reassurance without resolve is empty. Karen needed more than comfort under a roof. She needed consistency in the daylight. And Preston, despite his promise, had not yet faced what would come when doubt knocked again. He gave her words she deserved, but not the foundation she required. Not yet. Tasha Monroe knew how to make an entrance. She never knocked, never waited. She didn't need to. Preston had given her that kind of access years ago. Off and on, they'd been something never real, never public, but consistent enough that she felt entitled to drop by. So when she pulled up to his ranch in a red coupe, heels tapping against the gravel, sunglasses perched high, and lips coated in that same wine-colored gloss he used to admire, she already knew he'd answer the door. And he did. Tasha, Preston muttered, surprised. Still remember my name? She smirked, walking past him into the foyer without waiting to be invited. He closed the door slowly, unsure how to react. It had been almost a year since they last spoke. You look tired, she said, setting her bag on the entry table. Too much work or too much trouble? He didn't respond. Tasha turned to face him fully. I've been hearing things. Preston folded his arms. From who? Dallas is small, she shrugged. Word gets around. She paced the living room like she still owned a piece of it. Like nothing had changed. Like there hadn't been silence and distance and the end of whatever they used to pretend was between them. I heard you've been seen sniffing around some girl at the mall, she said, half laughing. A stockroom girl? Preston's jaw tightened. Watch your mouth. Tasha grinned. Touchy. That tells me everything I need to know. He didn't take the bait. But Tasha wasn't here to be polite. She was here to remind him of something ugly dressed in perfume and pearls. You thinking about getting serious with her? She asked. That's not your concern. Actually, it is. Because a man like you, rich, lonely, aging, needs to be careful who he lets get close, especially women who know how to play the long game. Preston's eyes narrowed. What do you want, Tasha? She shrugged. Just came to check on you. See if you needed reminding that not every woman who keeps her hands clean is clean. Her smile lingered. Sweet. Poisoned. And that's when she planted the first seed. Tasha didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse, didn't shout, didn't press. She dripped out in conversation like honey into tea, slow, sweet, and hard to trace once it dissolved. You ever wonder why a woman like that hasn't been snatched up already? She asked, lounging in Preston's leather chair like she owned it. Preston stood by the window, back stiff. Tasha kept going. She's pretty sure. Smart too, I'm guessing. But 35, no ring, no man? Something ain't adding up. He turned slightly. You done? She smiled. Not yet. She crossed one leg over the other, her red heel dangling like a threat. Women like her. They know how to keep a man interested without ever giving too much, she said. Make you chase them, make you feel like it's your idea. Then once you're in deep, they show you the bill. Preston shook his head. Karen doesn't ask for anything. That's the trick, Tasha said, eyes gleaming. The smart ones never ask. They wait until you're emotionally invested, until your name's on their lease, until the baby's on the way. He looked at her sharply. She's not pregnant. Yet, Tasha whispered. But when she is, don't act surprised. She stood and walked over to him, laying a manicured hand on his arm. You're a man with everything to lose. Don't give your legacy to someone who knows how to smile and play humble. He didn't push her hand away, didn't correct her, didn't defend Karen the way he should have. And that silence? It told Tasha everything she came to find out. She had opened the door of doubt, just enough for him to peek through. Preston didn't realize it yet, but something in his mind had shifted. Not loudly, not completely, but enough. Tasha leaned in, her voice dropping low. Just be careful, baby. Not every woman who says no is saying it because she's pure. Some are just better players. And with that she walked out, leaving behind her scent, her smirk, and the beginning of what would cost him more than he could ever replace. Preston didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed with the television on mute, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, uneven circles. Karen's laugh echoed in his mind, sharp, rich, unforced. Her scent lingered on his pillow. Her body, her voice, her honesty, all of it haunted him. But so did Tasha's words. They circled in his head like smoke. Don't give your legacy to someone who knows how to smile and play humble. He hated how easily those words slipped under his skin, hated how even a sliver of doubt could pull apart everything he thought he was building with Karen. Was it possible? Could a woman like Karen, so composed, so firm, be playing a deeper game? He remembered her silence when he offered gifts, her rejection of flowers, her refusal to accept a ride or even let him pay for lunch. At the time, it made him admire her. Now, in the dark, it made him wonder. Was she trying to look different from the rest just to win his trust? He hated the thought, but he couldn't stop it. Tasha hadn't screamed or cursed. She'd spoken like someone who'd seen too much, someone who knew how women worked when money was in the room. And though Preston tried to push it away, the question had already settled into the back of his mind. What if Karen was waiting for the right moment to ask for something? A key, a house, a future, not out of love, but out of strategy. He sat up, rubbed his hands down his face, and exhaled hard. She's not like that, he whispered aloud. But doubt didn't need volume. It only needed space, and Preston had just given it a seat at the table. Karen noticed it right away. It was in the way Preston greeted her the next time he came to the store, too casual, too distant. His eyes scanned her, not with warmth, but with hesitation. His shoulders were stiff, his tone clipped. She clocked it within seconds. Something wrong? She asked, as she folded sweaters near the register. Preston shook his head. No, just tired. Karen nodded slowly. You sure? He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, she didn't push. Not yet. But something had shifted. The man who once leaned in, now leaned away. The one who once listened closely, now avoided eye contact. It wasn't cold. It was worse. It was calculated. By the time her shift ended, she'd made up her mind. They sat outside on a bench near the parking garage, his truck parked in the distance. Karen leaned back, arms crossed, studying his face. "Who got to you?" she asked plainly. Preston blinked. "What?" "I know what doubt looks like, Preston. I've had it thrown at me my whole life. And you've been looking at me sideways all day." He looked away. "Who was it?" she repeated. "You're bored? An ex? A friend? Who came into your ear and started whispering garbage?" "I didn't say anyone did," he muttered. "You didn't have to." He sighed, long and slow. Tasha dropped by the ranch. Karen's stomach tightened. And she had some opinions. Karen laughed once, short, sharp, bitter. "Of course she did. I didn't ask her to come, but you let her stay. And now you're looking at me like I'm holding a knife behind my back." Preston opened his mouth, then closed it. Karen stood. "You know what hurts? Not that she said it, but that you believed it could be true. I didn't say I believed it. You didn't have to." She took a step back, eyes locked on his. "I've been real with you, every time. I didn't need your money. I still don't, and now I see it doesn't matter what I do. You'll always wonder if I've got an angle." Preston tried to speak, but Karen wasn't finished. "You want to question me? Fine, but say it to my face." Karen's voice dropped low, not weak, not afraid, just quiet enough to cut deeper. "You think I'm her?" Preston flinched. She stepped forward. "You think I'm like the woman who lied to you? The one who faked a pregnancy? The one who played you for money?" His throat tightened. "I didn't say that." "No," she said. "But you let her name change how you see mine." The words cracked through the space between them. "You know how many men have looked at me like I was a threat? Like I was one question away from being exposed as a fraud, all because I don't fit their definition of safe?" Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but fury. The kind that builds after years of being misread. "You think because I don't need you, I must be scheming?" she asked. "Because I didn't melt when you brought me gifts, I must be calculating?" Preston opened his mouth. She cut him off. "Let me tell you something. I could have chased men for money. Lord knows I've had chances. But I didn't, because I knew the price. And I refused to trade myself in for comfort." He looked at her, speechless. Karen's eyes glistened, but her voice never wavered. "I gave you my time, my body, my trust. And what do I get back? A comparison to someone who used you?" He tried again. "Karen." "No," she snapped. "If you need to paint me in someone else's shadow to protect your pride, do it without me." She turned, hands clenched at her sides. Preston reached out, but she stepped away. "Don't touch me unless you believe me." He lowered his hand. She stared at him for a long second. "I'm not her. I was never her. And the fact that you need reminding tells me everything." With that, Karen walked off, her footsteps fast and hard across the pavement. Preston stood there, alone, exposed and ashamed. He had broken the one thing she offered freely, truth. Karen didn't walk away quietly. Her heels struck the pavement with purpose. Her breath was tight. Her eyes burned, not just from tears, but from the weight of betrayal she didn't deserve. Preston stood frozen near his truck, watching her move farther from him with every step. He wanted to call out, to say something, anything, but the words stuck in his throat like gravel. He'd questioned her. He let someone else's voice override everything Karen had shown him. Not once had she asked for his money, leaned on his name, or pretended to be anyone but who she was. And still, he doubted her. Karen didn't cry in front of him. She wouldn't give him that. But the second she reached the edge of the parking garage, her chest caved in. She leaned against the concrete wall, back turned, shoulders shaking. But her face stayed dry. She wouldn't break. Not for a man who couldn't tell the difference between a woman with pride and one with a plan. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about respect. And once that cracks, love can't hold anything. Preston took one step forward. Karen straightened immediately, without looking back. "Don't follow me," she said. He stopped. She walked away with her chin high, her spine straight, and her heart cracking beneath her ribs. And this time, she meant it. She was done giving men second chances they hadn't earned. Not again. Not ever. Was Karen right to walk away? If someone questioned your worth after you gave them everything, would you stay? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share this story if it's got you feeling something. The echo of Karen's heels faded, but the impact didn't. Preston stood in the middle of that near-empty parking lot, hands loose. At his sides, lips slightly parted like he still might call her back, but he didn't. He couldn't. Because deep down, he knew he'd crossed a line that words couldn't walk him back from. He hadn't hit her. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cursed. But he'd done something worse. He made her feel small. Made her feel like all the dignity she carried wasn't enough to be believed. He looked down at the ground. There was no storm, no wind, no crashing moment to mark what had just happened. Just stillness. And the kind of silence that follows after a man realizes he was the problem all along. The same man who once called her different had treated her like everyone else. He turned slowly, climbed into his truck, and sat there with the engine off. His hands gripped the steering wheel, but he wasn't going anywhere. The seat beside him, where she once sat, where her laughter once filled the cabin, felt colder now. He thought of the first time he saw her carrying that box, the way she hadn't needed him, the way that had drawn him in. And now, that same strength had walked away from him. Preston closed his eyes. He wasn't angry at Karen. He was angry at himself, because he had asked her to open up, while he stood behind a wall. And when she finally let him in, he let someone else's shadow speak louder than her truth. He leaned his head back and let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding since she turned away. Not every mistake ends with a slammed door. Some end quietly, with a woman walking away, and a man realizing he might have just lost the only thing in his life that was real. Karen never missed work. She showed up when she had cramps, when buses were late, when the rain soaked her shoes, when management called in sick. But that week, she called Ruth twice, once to ask for a late start, the second time to say she wouldn't make it in. "Are you okay, honey?" Ruth had asked. "Yeah," Karen lied. "Just a bug. I'll shake it off." But she didn't. She woke up 3 mornings in a row feeling nauseous. Her appetite was gone. Scents that never bothered her now made her gag. Even her favorite herbal tea turned her stomach. She sat on her couch in sweatpants and a faded college hoodie, arms wrapped around her midsection. Her body didn't feel like hers. Something had shifted. At first, she chalked it up to stress. The argument with Preston had left her emotionally drained. Maybe that was it. Maybe her body was reacting to the emotional blow. But deep down, something else whispered louder. Her cycle hadn't come. She sat frozen on the couch, that fact punching through her haze like a siren. She reached for her phone, pulled up her calendar, and counted again. She was late, over a week. Karen stood slowly, walked to the bathroom, and opened the bottom drawer under the sink. Tucked inside a box of unopened razors and spare soap bars was a single pregnancy test she'd bought months ago, more out of preparation than necessity. Now it felt like a lifeline, or a time bomb. She stared at the box for what felt like forever. Then, with hands that trembled just slightly, she opened it. The instructions were simple. The weight was not. She sat on the closed toilet lid, arms crossed, heel bouncing against the tile. Every second ticked louder than the last. Her stomach twisted. When the timer on her phone went off, she didn't move right away. She reached for the test with slow, deliberate fingers, already bracing herself for a negative. It would be negative. It had to be. She flipped it over and froze. 2 bold pink lines stared back at her. Her breath caught in her throat. Karen whispered to the quiet room, "No." But the answer was clear. She was pregnant. Karen sat still for what felt like hours, the positive test lying on the bathroom counter like a quiet scream. 2 lines. No question. No blur. No mistake. 2 lines. She blinked, trying to force her mind to catch up with what her body already knew. Her hands pressed into her lap. Her breath came in slow, uneven pulls. Pregnant. She whispered it out loud, as if saying it might change it. "I'm pregnant." Her reflection in the mirror stared back. Same woman, but different now. She looked the same, full lips, tired eyes, strong posture. But everything had shifted in that single moment. The ground beneath her feet no longer felt solid. Her first thought wasn't joy. It was fear. Not because of the baby, because of the man who helped create it. She looked down at her stomach, still flat, still quiet. But inside, something was alive, and growing. She wrapped her arms around herself and stood from the toilet, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water she didn't drink. She sat back down, then got up again. Every second came with a new wave of realization. I'm going to be a mother. She thought about the night it happened. The way Preston had touched her, not like a man using her, but like he needed her. The way they moved together, like they'd found something worth holding. But that was before the doubts, before the accusations, before the damage. Now she stood alone, pregnant, no plan, no safety net, no certainty that the man whose child she carried would even believe her, let alone support her. Karen closed her eyes and rested her hand gently on her belly. "This changes everything," she whispered. Everything. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. They were still blocked by the shock, by the questions she couldn't yet form. She picked up the test and stared at it again, as if it might blink or fade or shift. But it didn't. It was positive. She was pregnant. And no matter what happened next, she couldn't unsee it, unfeel it, or undo it. Karen didn't sleep that night. She paced her small apartment barefoot, arms wrapped around herself, moving from the kitchen to the living room and back like her body could outrun her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, those two lines flashed behind her lids. Pregnant. She'd said it 100 times in her head, whispered it to the mirror, spoke it aloud in the dark. But the word didn't feel real. Not yet. Not when everything else around her still looked the same. The couch she'd bought secondhand, the cracked cabinet near the fridge, the sound of her neighbor's late-night TV. She ran a hand down her face and stopped in front of the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, quiet and indifferent. How was she supposed to do this? She had no partner, no savings for diapers or bottles or hospital bills. She barely made enough to keep her head above water, let alone raise a child. She pulled out her phone, stared at Preston's contact, thumb hovering. He should know. But what if he didn't believe her? What if he accused her of doing it on purpose? The memory of his doubt the last time they spoke, "You sure you're not playing me?" stabbed her all over again. Karen turned off her phone and tossed it on the couch. She couldn't do this halfway. This wasn't about just telling him. This was about accepting that if he turned away again, she would be completely on her own. And the terrifying part was, she wasn't sure she was strong enough for that. She sank to the floor, knees pulled to her chest. She'd built a life around independence, around being the one who didn't need help, who didn't fall apart. But this wasn't about pride. This was about a child, a life, a future she hadn't planned for. "I can't do this alone," she whispered into the dark. But no one answered, and the silence reminded her what it might feel like if he didn't show up. 2 days passed before Karen made the call. She didn't want to. Every part of her wanted to hold the news close, keep it tucked away in her chest where no one could use it against her. But that wasn't fair to the child growing inside her or to herself. She deserved to be heard, and Preston needed to know. She called after sunset. The air outside her apartment was still, but her hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear. The line rang once, twice. Then, "Karen?" His voice came through, rough and quiet. She hesitated. "Yeah." A long pause followed. Neither of them rushed to fill it. Preston spoke again. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "I know," she said. "But this isn't about us." That caught his attention. "What's going on?" Karen took a breath, her fingers pressing into her thigh. "I took a test." Silence. "I'm pregnant." Preston didn't respond. "Say something," she said. "How do you know it's mine?" The words landed like a slap, even though he hadn't raised his voice. Karen pulled the phone from her ear and stared at it for a second, disbelief coating her skin. Then she put it back. "You really just said that to me." "I'm not trying to insult you," he said quickly. I need to be sure." "I haven't been with anyone else," she said, her voice icy. "But I don't need to convince you of that. I called because I thought you deserved to know." "I do," he replied, softer now. "But Karen, you have to understand. This caught me off guard." "I don't have time for your comfort," she snapped. "This is real. I'm not here to trap you. I don't want your money. I want you to understand that, whether you believe me or not, I'm carrying your child." He fell quiet. Karen didn't wait for approval. "I'm not chasing you," she said. "You know where I live. You know where I stand." She ended the call, and for the first time since taking the test, she didn't cry. She was too angry for tears. Preston stared at the phone in his hand long after Karen ended the call. Her voice still rang in his ears, clear, strong, unshaken. "I'm carrying your child." But what he'd said back, it hit him harder now than it did when it slipped out. "How do you know it's mine?" He hadn't meant for it to sound like an accusation, but it was. And deep down, he knew it. He sat in the dark, one hand pressed to his forehead, thoughts crashing in too fast to sort. The ranch was quiet. His dogs hadn't barked in hours. The world kept spinning like nothing had changed. But everything had. She was pregnant. And instead of asking if she was okay, instead of stepping up like a man should, the first thing out of his mouth was a question soaked in suspicion. Not care, not concern, just doubt. Because deep in his core, Preston was still that guarded man, still building walls to keep himself safe, even if it meant pushing away the one person who had never asked for anything from him. He thought of Karen's voice, not shaking, not begging, just firm. She told him what it was, not what he wanted, not what he feared. But he couldn't hear it for what it was, truth, because he was too stuck on fear. Fear that he'd been wrong to trust. Fear that he'd be trapped. Fear that the people whispering in his ear were right. He hadn't asked for this, but neither had she. And now? Now he'd made the mistake of responding like she was a problem instead of a woman carrying his child. He closed his eyes. Whatever came next, he'd earned it. Karen didn't plan to see him. But when Preston texted the next morning, "Can we talk face to face?" she agreed. Not for closure, not for softness, for clarity. They met at a quiet diner on the edge of town. A neutral space. No one to interrupt, no memory attached. Karen walked in with her shoulders square and her jaw set. She wore no makeup, no jewelry. She didn't dress up. She didn't want charm or illusion between them. Preston stood when she arrived. She didn't offer a hug. He didn't reach for one. They sat across from each other, a black coffee in front of him, nothing in front of her. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. Karen didn't blink. "Say what you brought me here to say." He looked tired, older than usual, but she wasn't in the mood to feel sorry. "I panicked," he said. "I shouldn't have said what I said. You questioned my integrity. I know. You questioned the child I'm carrying. I know." Her voice was calm, too calm. "I let you in, Preston," she said, "when I had every reason not to." "I thought you were different," he whispered. Karen leaned forward. "I am different, but you still looked at me like I was every woman who ever hurt you." Preston tried to reach across the table. Karen stood. She walked around, fast, purposeful, and without warning, crack. Her hand met his cheek. The diner went still. No one spoke. No one moved. Preston's head snapped slightly to the side. He didn't raise his hand. Didn't defend himself. Karen stood over him, chest heaving. "That was for not believing me," she said. "That was for disrespecting me. And that," she pressed her hand to her belly, "was for speaking that child's name with doubt." Preston's eyes watered, but he stayed silent. Karen turned without another word. And as she walked out, she didn't hesitate. Not once. She was done letting men shape her worth through the lens of their own fear. This time, she left nothing behind. Not hope, not patience, not even a goodbye. The days blurred. Preston sat on the porch swing, glass in hand, bourbon swirling like the storm inside him. Morning, noon, midnight. It didn't matter. He drank through them all. The man once respected across Texas for his discipline, his vision, his grit, was now just a shadow with a bottle. His shirt often half-buttoned, stubble unshaven, eyes bloodshot. The cowboy boots he once polished daily now collected dust. His ranch hat stayed thrown across a chair he hadn't touched in days. Every corner of the house whispered her name. The sheets still smelled faintly of Karen's cocoa butter lotion. The upstairs closet held a scarf she forgot. His kitchen cabinet had the herbal tea she liked. Even the damn bathroom mirror reflected her stare, disappointed, proud, hurt all at once. The silence tortured him. He would sit in the rocking chair past midnight, one hand gripping a nearly empty bottle, the other pressed to his temple like he could force the regret to drain out through his skin. He didn't answer calls, didn't open mail, didn't respond to the ranch foreman. When Elijah, his longtime stable hand, walked in and saw Preston passed out. On the floor one morning, the man took a picture and sent it to the board. They had warned him once. They wouldn't warn him again. But Preston didn't care. Or pretended not to. He kept drinking. Kept mumbling to the empty air, "I ruined it. She was real." I pushed her away. No one could pull him out. Not friends, not staff, not even Elijah, who had worked with him for over 2 decades. They tried to call his pastor. He didn't answer. Someone from his late fiancée's family even reached out. Still, nothing. It was as if Preston had locked the world out, boarded every window of his soul, and chosen to rot in the dark. Every night, he looked out across the acres of land he once cherished, and for the first time in his life, it felt like all that dirt meant nothing, because none of it would ever call him Daddy. The ranch felt it before the board did. Cattle schedules got skipped. Feed deliveries ran late. Payroll was missed, twice. The ranch hands started grumbling, but no one dared speak too loud. Preston Horace, the man who used to rise before the sun and check every corner of his land by horseback, hadn't left the house in nearly 2 weeks. The fences sagged in places. The barn roof leaked during the last rain. Orders for beef exports got pushed to voicemail. Emails stacked up. Vendors grew impatient. One even pulled out of a contract saying, "If Preston doesn't care anymore, why should we?" Elijah, now managing everything unofficially, ran on fumes. He fielded calls from frustrated suppliers, coached the new hands, and tried to smooth things over with bankers who needed answers. But Elijah wasn't the face of Horace Cattle Company. Preston was, and the world noticed when that face vanished. Clients started asking questions. Investors pulled out. A planned expansion into Fort Worth froze mid-construction. Rumors spread. Preston's losing it. He's sick. He's selling the ranch. Some said he was dying. Others claimed he'd fallen under a woman's spell. Either way, the empire he built over 4 decades was slipping between his fingers. Elijah walked into the main house one evening after a long day, found Preston sitting on the floor in the hallway, a half-empty bottle clinking beside him. "Boss," Elijah said quietly, "we're drowning out there." Preston didn't move. "Payroll's behind. Livestock auction pulled out, and your name's being dragged through the mud on agri-news forums. This ranch is bleeding, and the men are scared." Still no response. Elijah crouched in front of him. "You always said the land don't matter without family. Well, she's gone, and now the land's falling too. Is this how it ends, boss? You gonna let everything burn?" Preston's eyes blinked slowly, heavy and red. But for the first time in days, something shifted in them. Not anger, not pain. Awareness. He had built the Horace name with sweat, blood, and pride, but now that same name was collapsing because of him. And deep inside, a voice whispered, "Do something, before it's too late." The board meeting that morning felt more like an intervention. 7 men and women in tailored blazers and leather boots sat stiff around the polished table in the ranch's old conference room. The windows overlooked pastures that once reflected Preston's pride. Now, patches of dry grass and uncollected hay told a different story. Preston walked in late, stubble on his jaw, tie missing, shirt wrinkled. He dropped into his chair without greeting a soul. Miriam Brooks, the most senior member after Preston, cleared her throat. "Mr. Horace, this meeting wasn't optional." Preston looked at her, unblinking. "I'm here, ain't I?" She exchanged a glance with the others, then spoke slowly. "We've had 6 contracts canceled this month. Our cattle feed supplier is demanding penalties. You missed the quarterly shareholder address. And your absence from last week's Ag Tech Summit in Austin? Embarrassing." "Wasn't in the mood to talk," Preston muttered. "We're not here to discuss your mood," said Carlton Reed, the ranch's CFO. "We're here because your neglect is costing us, and we can't sit on our hands anymore." Preston raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" Miriam folded her arms. "We're voting next week. If things don't change immediately, we're pushing for executive control. You'll be moved into an advisory role. Elijah will take over as interim CEO." Silence swallowed the room. Preston looked at each face, once loyal, now filled with frustration. These weren't outsiders. They were his people, his inner circle. The same ones who had toasted whiskey with him after his first million, who had buried cattle with him during the drought. Now they were threatening to take his legacy. "You think I don't see what's happening?" Preston said quietly. "You think I don't care?" "No," Miriam replied, her voice firmer now. "We think you've stopped, and this place can't afford your silence anymore." Carlton leaned in. "You told us once that this ranch would outlive you. Well, it won't, unless you stop mourning and start leading again." Preston looked down at his hands, weathered, scarred, strong. built everything with them. Now, those same hands were letting it slip. He stood slowly. You'll get your answer next week. He left the room with their eyes on his back, but his mind was already somewhere else. Dallas. Her. Rain hammered the streets of Dallas like punishment from the sky. Preston's boots splashed through puddles as he stepped out of his truck, soaked to the bone before he reached the small apartment building where Karen lived. The brim of his hat couldn't shield him tonight. Not from the weather. Not from guilt. He climbed the steps 2 at a time, water dripping from his coat. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with shame. It had been weeks since he last saw her. Weeks since he accused her of the one thing she had never given him reason to believe. Tonight, he didn't come to fix everything. He came because he couldn't go one more night without seeing her face. Preston stood in front of her door, hand raised, frozen. His chest tightened. What if she didn't open? What if she did? He knocked. Footsteps moved inside. A pause. Then the door creaked open. Karen stood there in a long robe, face bare, hair wrapped in a scarf. Her eyes widened when she saw him standing in the rain, drenched and shivering. Preston? Her voice was half a question, half disbelief. I had to come, he said, voice hoarse. You should have stayed wherever you were, she said, starting to close the door. He stopped it gently with his hand. Please. She looked at him, quiet, letting the rain speak for him. I've been a fool, Karen, he breathed. A damn fool. I let noise in my head drown out the truth I felt when I held you. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't interrupt. I don't sleep, he continued. I don't work. I don't think straight. The ranch is falling apart, and so am I. Karen exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the door. I didn't come to beg. I came to own it. I hurt you. I doubted you. I let someone else's poison speak louder than your love. That's on me. He stepped back slightly, eyes never leaving hers. But I need you to know something. I'm not here for the baby. I'm not here to fix my image. I'm here because I love you. That's it. Karen stared at him, eyes wet, but not from the rain. She didn't pull him in. She didn't shut the door. She just whispered, You're late. The rain didn't let up. It poured harder, drumming against the roof, the street, the railing behind Preston's back. But he didn't move. Neither did Karen. They stood on opposite sides of the threshold, separated by more than just a doorway. He removed his hat slowly, water streaking down his face. His silver hair clung to his forehead. His eyes, once proud, looked stripped bare. I thought I was protecting myself, he said, voice low. All these years I built walls so high, I forgot what it felt like to trust. Karen crossed her arms. And I'm the one who paid for it. You're right, he nodded. I listened to people who never mattered. I treated you like you were trying to take something from me, when all you ever did was give, your time, your heart, your body. Your truth. Her lip quivered, but she didn't look away. I've made money my whole life, he continued. I've bought land, built barns, raised bulls strong enough to break steel. But I never knew how weak I was until I saw you walk away. The wind picked up, flinging rain against his back. Still, he stood firm. I doubted you. I insulted you. I let a woman like Tasha infect my thinking, and for that, I'll never forgive myself. Karen stepped out, just enough to be touched by the rain, too. Her eyes searched his, demanding more than pretty words. I thought I needed an heir, he said. That's what the board said. That's what my pride screamed. But the truth is, I needed you. Not for my legacy, for my life. A beat of silence. Just rain and breath. I was a fool, he finally said. And if you never let me through that door again, I'll still stand here in the rain and take it. Because you deserve better than the man I was. Karen blinked fast, raindrops and tears mixing freely. Do you mean that? He nodded. Every word. Her arms dropped to her sides. You're soaked, she said. I deserve to be. She hesitated, then stepped back. Come inside, cowboy, but this time you listen. He stepped in, leaving the rain behind, for now. Karen handed Preston a towel without a word. He took it, drying his face and hair in silence. The small apartment smelled like lavender and shea butter. It was quiet, too quiet for how loud their hearts were beating. She sat down on the edge of her couch, legs crossed, hands resting on her lap. Preston stood awkwardly near the door, unsure whether he was welcome to sit. You came here tonight to apologize, she began, tone even. I heard you. But now I need to hear your plans. He nodded slowly. I want to fix what I broke. You think flowers or gifts will fix this? No, I know better. She raised her chin. Then tell me, what do you want from me, Preston? Say it. He swallowed hard. I want to marry you, not because you're carrying my child, not because my board wants it, not because I'm afraid of dying alone, but because I love you. Karen's eyes didn't soften. That word comes cheap for men like you. But love doesn't demand proof, it gives it. Preston stepped forward. Then let me prove it. I'll walk away from anything you ask me to. I'll put my entire life on pause. Whatever it takes. I don't need a man who's willing to pause his life, she cut in. I need one who's ready to live it with me, out loud, in public, without shame or second thoughts. His shoulders tensed. She leaned forward, her voice sharper now. You want me back? Then marry me because you love me, not because you're trying to make up for your guilt, not because of some legacy or name. If that's your reason, I'd rather raise this child alone. That hit him like a blow to the chest. But he nodded, steady. Then I'll do it right, he said. No more hiding, no more hesitation. You'll get a ring, a vow, and my whole name out in the open. Not because I have to, because I want to. Karen looked him over one more time. Don't say those words again until you're ready to act. I understand. She stood. Then start acting like a man who loves me. Preston exhaled, his jaw tight. I will. Preston Horace sat alone in his study, the lights low, the room thick with silence. The smell of old wood and burnt whiskey clung to the air, but tonight, the glass stayed untouched. On his desk lay a torn envelope, the sonogram Karen had mailed him weeks ago. He picked it up, staring at the tiny form captured in gray and black. That was his child, his son, and if he wanted a real future with Karen and that baby, he had to clean house. Starting now. Tasha Monroe barged into his office like she always did, uninvited, loud, wearing a dress that clung to her figure like a warning sign. You called me? She said, sliding into the leather chair across from him like she owned it. I did, Preston said, voice cold but steady. We need to end whatever this was, for good. She blinked, then laughed, low and mocking. You serious? Because of her? He didn't flinch. Yes. She leaned forward. That girl's playing you, Preston. You're rich, you're old, and she's pregnant. Do the math. He stood up slowly. You don't get to talk about her. You don't know her. And I don't owe you a future just because we had history. Tasha rose to her feet too, her smile gone. So, you're just throwing me away? He looked her in the eye. I'm cleaning up my life. Starting with you. Silence. Tasha stepped back, her pride dented. Don't come crawling back when she leaves you with nothing. She already gave me more than you ever did. Truth. Preston walked to the door and opened it. She stared at him for a long second, then walked past without another word. The slam of the front door echoed like a full stop in his life. Back in his study, he picked up the sonogram again, softer this time. It's just us now, kid, he whispered. And I'm not messing this up. He didn't need chaos. He didn't need a fling. He needed to be a man Karen could trust, a father his child could be proud of. And for the first time in a long while, Preston meant every word. Preston stood at the edge of the Horace Ranch stables, watching a few hands work the horses as the sun beat down on the dirt. The land was solid, clean, honest, everything he used to be before he let greed complicate his name. Back in the city, his other ventures told a different story. Nightclubs that thrived on under-the-table deals. Smoke and glass real estate flips with hidden loopholes. Silent investments in businesses he'd never even visited. Easy money. Dirty money. That life had to go. He made the first call that afternoon. Jared, pull out of the Midnight District lease. I'm selling the club. Everything tied to it. Let it go. Sir, that club clears over $500,000 monthly, his assistant stammered. I don't care, Preston snapped. List it. He hung up. Then he picked up again. By the end of the week, Preston had offloaded 5 assets. Strip clubs, crypto ventures with shady ties, late-night liquor routes that operated without permits. He didn't want blood money funding his future. Not when he had a baby on the way and a woman worth every ounce of clean effort. The calls didn't stop. His lawyer nearly had a heart attack. Preston, are you sure you want to walk away from all this capital? Yes, Preston said. If it comes with a question mark, I don't want it. Each sale meant a hit, not just to his wealth, but to his reputation in certain circles. People whispered. Old friends laughed behind closed doors. But none of that mattered. Preston slept better that week than he had in months. By Friday, his hands were no longer in things he couldn't say aloud with pride. He walked through his ranch office with his head high. No more silent deals. No more buried contracts. No more blurred lines between right and wrong. Karen didn't know it yet, but he wasn't just trying to win her back. He was trying to earn the right to stand beside her again, this time without shame. Money never made him whole, and now he was finally rich in ways that mattered. The past was poison. He was done drinking from it. Preston sat stiffly in the small folding chair, his broad shoulders hunched slightly as he tried to read the whiteboard. The room smelled of coffee, baby wipes, and something faintly sweet. Around him sat a mix of young couples and single moms. No one expected a 60-year-old billionaire in ostrich leather boots to walk into a free prenatal class at the Houston Community Center. But here he was. The instructor, a soft-spoken woman named Denise, raised an eyebrow when she saw his name on the attendance sheet. Preston Horace? He gave a quiet nod. I'm here to learn. He was terrible at first. During the diaper demo, the plastic baby slipped from his hands. At the breathing session, he wheezed louder than the moms. But he never missed a class. He asked questions, took notes, and offered no ego. Why are you here alone? A young woman asked one evening. My son deserves a present father, he answered plainly. Word spread fast. Some thought he was doing it for image, but Preston didn't bring cameras. He didn't post about it online. He just showed up, week after week. At first, he stuck out like a sore thumb, but slowly, he became part of the group. He carried chairs. He fetched water bottles. He sat beside young dads and listened when they talked about their fears. One night, during a group discussion on fatherhood, Denise called on him. What do you think it means to be a father, Mr. Horace? He looked down at his rough hands, the same ones that had signed off on ranches, railways, and oil rigs. Now they'd be holding his newborn son. Being a father means showing up even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. Silence fell over the room. After class, a young man patted his back. Respect, sir. Preston left every class tired but lighter. This wasn't about proving himself to Karen anymore. It was about becoming worthy of the title dad. One evening, Karen showed up unannounced and stood outside the classroom window. She didn't enter. She watched him try to swaddle a doll, tongue pressed against his teeth in concentration. She turned and walked away, but with a half smile. Karen sat in the waiting room of Dr. Lacey's clinic, flipping through a baby magazine without reading a word. Her belly was growing fast now. She was nearly 5 months in. Each visit reminded her she was doing this alone, or so she thought. The door creaked open. Preston walked in, clean-shaven, wearing a simple blue shirt and jeans, not his usual cowboy suit. No driver, no assistant. He spotted her and walked over slowly. I called ahead. They said it was today, he said gently. Karen didn't speak. She just looked at the empty chair next to her. After a few seconds, he took the hint and sat down. They didn't say much, but for the first time in months, they were in the same room, and it wasn't explosive. The nurse called her name. Karen stood up. Then she turned halfway and looked at him. You coming or what? He stood like a soldier summoned to battle and followed her inside. During the ultrasound, the screen came alive with the flicker of a tiny heartbeat. Preston's hand gripped the side of the chair as if anchoring himself. Karen watched him from the corner of her eye. That's your son, the nurse said. He nodded. Then his eyes glassed over. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Just stared at the screen, breathing slow and steady. Karen clutched the tissue in her lap, unsure what to feel. Week after week, Preston kept showing up. Never missed an appointment. He brought water bottles, protein bars, even bought extra maternity pillows for the car ride. He sat through lab tests, heard every heartbeat, and held her hand once when the nurse couldn't find a vein. He didn't force conversation. He didn't try to sweet-talk her. He just showed up. One morning, after a particularly quiet ride back, Karen broke the silence. Why are you doing all this? Preston didn't hesitate. Because I owe him, and I owe you. She turned her face to the window, but her eyes stung. He didn't push her to respond. He just kept driving, one hand resting gently on her unopened appointment folder, the other steady on the wheel. Whispers followed Preston wherever he went now. At the country club, eyes trailed him like flies on meat. The men who used to cheer with him over bourbon now raised eyebrows. The women, tight-faced and glossy-lipped, wore smirks like war paint. I heard he's playing stepdaddy to a mall worker. He lost his mind chasing after a pregnant gold digger. 60 and desperate. What a fall. The worst part? They didn't whisper softly. They wanted him to hear. At a private gala held at the Horace Foundation Hall, Preston made his first public appearance since the scandal broke. He walked in alone, no Tasha, no board members flanking him, just himself. In a dark suit and boots, like the cowboy he'd always been. Someone from the press tried to corner him. "Mr. Horace, is it true your heir's mother was a store clerk?" Preston didn't flinch. He paused, turned, and faced the camera. She was working harder than any of the men in this room, and she didn't ask for a dime. That clip went viral. Half the city gasped. The other half applauded. His board members were split. A few called emergency meetings. One even threatened to leak photos of Karen from the mall to embarrass her publicly. He looked that man in the face and fired him on the spot. "You don't speak about the mother of my child like that, and keep your seat." Meanwhile, Karen heard the noise. It reached her through old coworkers and social media. She expected him to bend, to apologize for her existence. But instead, he did the opposite. He stood taller. He donated in her name at public events. He turned down a major partnership with a firm that disrespected her background. He even corrected someone mid-meeting. "It's Karen, not that girl. Say her name." By the time the city's biggest charity auction came around, Preston arrived alone. Again, but this time with a visible badge that read, "My loyalty's not for sale." And he meant it. Karen saw the footage later that night. She sat on her couch in silence, her hand resting on her stomach, her chest tight. For once, she didn't feel like a secret or a scandal. She felt seen. Karen didn't let his public declarations fool her. Words were easy. Promises cheaper. She wanted proof. The kind that couldn't be staged for cameras or boardrooms. So she watched. At first, from a distance. Preston kept showing up to the prenatal clinic every Wednesday morning. Never late. Never rescheduling. He sat quietly in the waiting room next to pregnant teenagers and nervous dads. He didn't wear sunglasses or hide behind a name. He just waited for her, whether she acknowledged him or not. She'd ask the receptionist after each appointment. Was he early? 15 minutes early. Every time, the woman said, chuckling. One time, she switched clinics without telling him. He found out the location 3 days later. Instead of texting her complaints, he sent her a new appointment card with a handwritten note. "You choose the place. I'll be there. Always." She tested him again. Karen asked her friend Danielle to flirt with him at a hardware store in San Antonio. Preston didn't bite. He stepped back and showed her the engagement ring he'd kept in his coat pocket since the day she left. "She's carrying my child. That means I'm taken, body and soul." Danielle couldn't believe it. Neither could Karen. Still, she wasn't ready to give in. So she told him the nursery didn't need a man's touch. Preston built a crib anyway. Left it outside her door with a sticky note for his backbone, built by his father. Another week passed, and she caught him reading pregnancy books in a diner alone. He looked so out of place with his big hands flipping through pages about feeding schedules and diaper rash. She snapped a photo from behind the counter. When he looked up and saw her, he didn't smile or wave. He just nodded, like he knew he still had work to do. The final test came when a reporter tried to bait him again, asking whether he regretted getting involved with someone from below his tax bracket. Preston looked right into the camera and said, "You're asking the wrong question. Ask me if I'd regret not being in my son's life." That night, Karen didn't sleep. She stayed up reading every article, every clip, every post. This wasn't about redemption. It was about growth. And she was finally starting to believe it. Storms came, and he stood still. Not once did Preston complain. Not when Karen ignored his texts. Not when her father cornered him outside the baby store and told him to stay away for good. Not even when an investor pulled out of one of his deals, citing personal drama as the reason. He took every blow without backing out. He had made his choice. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he still showed up with groceries and left them at her door, never rang the bell, never asked to come in. Diapers, fresh fruit, prenatal vitamins. Things she hadn't mentioned aloud, but somehow he knew. The neighbors started noticing. "Your cowboy keeps showing up," Mrs. Langley whispered while watering her plants. "Don't know what he did, but that man looks like he's trying to fix it with his whole life." He was. Preston canceled a major ranch auction just because it fell on the same day as her third ultrasound. He lost the bid, but gained her attention. She didn't say anything, but she saw him in the hallway, pacing, holding a teddy bear and wearing a nervous expression. He wasn't just present, he was invested. Even when she ignored him during the scan, he didn't flinch. He just looked at the screen, eyes wide, heart open. When Karen's coworker from the mall accidentally posted an old rumor online calling her a gold digger, the post went viral. Preston didn't call her to complain. He went live on his own account. "I chose her. I'll keep choosing her. And I don't care what anyone thinks about where she worked or where I met her. She's the mother of my child, and she's the strongest person I know." He didn't do it for sympathy. He didn't tag her. He didn't ask for a reply. He just told the truth and moved on with his day, like it was normal. Karen scrolled through the comments that night. People were siding with him, but more importantly, people were seeing her for who she was. She'd expected him to fold under pressure, walk away when things got messy, but he didn't. He stayed, quiet, consistent, sincere, and that kind of love? It was harder to ignore. Karen stood in the middle of her kitchen, clutching a carton of orange juice with trembling hands. She hadn't cried in weeks, not since that slap, not since the look of betrayal that ruined everything, but now the pressure cracked her wide open. She had just returned from her OB appointment. Preston was there, as always, silent, respectful, steady. He never missed one. Today, though, he didn't speak much. He only offered a soft smile when their baby kicked, then handed her a new pair of comfortable walking shoes. She hadn't even mentioned her back pain, but somehow he knew. It broke her. She poured the juice, but her vision blurred with tears. She gripped the counter. This man, this stubborn, prideful, guarded man, had changed. He wasn't charming her with expensive watches or candlelit promises. He was showing up, every time. When she had morning sickness, he mailed herbal teas. When her feet swelled, he found her compression socks that didn't itch. He even dropped off a handwritten note last week that read, "I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be present, always." She read it 3 times before throwing it away, but she remembered every word. Now, with everything boiling to the surface, Karen finally let herself fall apart. She cried into her hands, the kind of crying that shakes the body and leaves no room for pride. She cried because she was tired. She cried because she was scared. But mostly, she cried because Preston didn't run. No matter how cruel her silence became, no matter how guarded her heart stayed, no matter how much her body swelled with responsibility and fear, he stayed. When she heard a knock on the door minutes later, she knew it was him. She didn't answer, but she pressed her palm to the wood, as if he could feel it on the other side. And for the first time since all this started, she whispered into the quiet, "I don't hate you anymore." She wasn't sure if he heard it. She wasn't sure if she'd say it again. But it was the first step, and for a woman who'd been abandoned, doubted and tested, saying it was a lot. It meant the wall was starting to crack. Karen didn't expect him to show up again tonight. But there he was, on her porch with no umbrella, water dripping off his cowboy hat, boots soaked through, holding a quiet bag of groceries in one hand and a folded blanket in the other. He didn't speak right away. He looked at her, eyes searching her soul, not for approval, but for permission. She stepped aside. No words. She moved to the couch and sat down slowly, her belly rising beneath her sweatshirt like a soft mountain. Preston followed, cautious, his hands careful as if holding something sacred. He placed the groceries on the table, took off his boots, and sat on the floor beside her. Silence stretched, thick and honest. Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came. Instead, she guided his hand, without thinking, onto her stomach. It was the first time. His palm rested gently, warm and wide, on the soft curve of her belly. And right then, their son kicked. Preston gasped. Not a dramatic one. A stunned, trembling sound only a man who once thought he'd never be a father could make. He looked up at her, eyes wet, voice low. "That's our son." Karen blinked, heart crashing against her ribs. She didn't speak. She couldn't. He kept his hand there, like he was afraid the moment would pass if he moved. He added, voice cracking, "You're not alone in this, Karen. Not anymore. Not again." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Then show up. Always." He nodded. Not with flair, not with grand vows. Just a simple, firm nod that told her he meant every word. He stayed on the floor, hands still on her belly, listening, feeling, breathing in the moment. No more accusations, no more tests, no more side stories or doubt. Just two people, and the life between them. In that room, something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something close. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't force a conversation. He just stayed there, connected, grounded, whispering promises into her belly like the child could hear. Maybe he could, because the baby kicked again, and this time, Karen smiled. The house was quiet. Preston still sat on the floor, now leaning against the couch. Karen had fallen asleep beside him, her head tilted, her breath steady. He didn't move. He watched her, her hands resting over her belly, the corners of her lips relaxed. She looked at peace, and for the first time in a long while, so did he. When she stirred, her eyes met his. There was no tension in her face, only stillness, truth. "You're still here," she murmured. "I'm not going anywhere," he answered. Karen studied him in the dim room, lit only by the soft light over the stove. "You've changed." "No," he said quietly. "I grew up." She stood, slowly, stretching her back. Her eyes never left his. He rose too, cautious, like this moment needed reverence. When she walked closer, he didn't reach for her. He waited. Her fingers touched his chest first, then slid to his face. She took in his tired eyes, the grays in his beard, the man who had finally laid his pride down. She leaned in and whispered, "This time, don't make me regret it." "I won't," he said, firm. Then she kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't to erase the pain or to prove a point. It was slow, careful, real. His hands cupped her face, pulling her closer as if she might disappear if he didn't hold tight. Her arms wrapped around his waist, steadying herself as his warmth swallowed her. They didn't make it to the bedroom right away. They stood there, in the middle of her small living room, surrounded by folded baby. Clothes, open sonogram pictures, and old memories they both needed to let go of. When they did finally reach the bed, nothing about it was fast. He undressed her like she was sacred. She let him. He kissed every scar her heart had carried. She touched every place he thought was too broken to love. There were no loud moans or wild flings, just breath, connection, soft gasps, whispers, a slow emotional reunion of two people who had torn each other apart and chose to begin again. By dawn, they laid tangled beneath the sheets. No regrets, no secrets, just love. And this time, it wasn't built on lust. It was earned. The sun dipped low over Preston Horace's ranch, casting golden light across the open fields. Rows of wooden chairs faced a flower-draped altar at the edge of the property. A gentle breeze stirred the white linens tied to every seat. The sky above was streaked in pink and soft orange, the kind of evening that made even the toughest cowhands slow down. Karen stood just behind the barn, her gown simple but breathtaking. Cream silk hugged her curves, and her hair flowed freely, a delicate flower tucked above her ear. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. Her father squeezed her hand, eyes misty with pride. "Don't let the past cloud your present," he whispered. "Walk to him like the queen you are." Music floated over the ranch. A live band played a slow country soul melody, soft but steady. Karen stepped into view. Conversations stopped. Everyone turned. Preston stood at the altar, heart pounding, dressed in a dark suit with his Stetson in hand. His eyes didn't leave her for a second. Each step Karen took closed the distance between heartbreak and healing. The ranch was filled with people from two different lives, family and friends from her world, board members and socialites from his. Some looked impressed. Others looked surprised. But Karen kept walking. This moment wasn't for them. She reached the altar. Preston swallowed hard, barely able to speak. "You take my breath, Karen." The minister cleared his throat, motioning them closer. But Preston's eyes were locked on her face. Her hand slid into his, fingers lacing tight, like they'd done the night she forgave him. The ceremony began. Vows were coming. Promises would be spoken. But already, in that quiet second beneath the sunset, surrounded by wildflowers and wide skies, Everything felt full. This was the start of something sacred. The guest list read like a clash of cultures. On one side, Karen's people, her family, childhood friends from the south side of Houston, CEO workers from Galleria Mall. They wore bold colors, church hats, braids, curls, and natural crowns. Their laughter was loud, their hugs tight. On the other side, Preston's world, corporate men in tailored suits, women in sleek designer gowns, and old ranchers in polished boots, skeptical eyes scanning the crowd. The divide was visible, but so was the curiosity. Karen's best friend, Rochelle, leaned toward a high society woman, sipping champagne near the bar. "You ever been to a wedding with collard greens and lobster on the same menu?" she joked. The woman blinked, then cracked a smile. First time for everything. Inside the barn where the reception was being staged, servers moved through, the crowd with trays of shrimp cocktails and cornbread muffins. A cowboy fiddler played beside a DJ booth where hip-hop would later take over. The seating chart had been intentionally mixed. No cliques, no divisions. Still, whispers traveled. "She came from the mall? He's 59 and getting married now. She's carrying his child." She turned him around. Some guests judged. Some admired. But none could deny the atmosphere. The sunset outside painted everything gold. A small boy from Karen's family twirled with Preston's niece by the hay bales. An older white rancher clinked glasses with a young black entrepreneur Karen had mentored through a side project. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. At the center of it all stood Karen and Preston, grateful, grounded in love. When Preston's longtime friend, Mr. Abernathy, approached him and clapped his shoulder, he leaned in with a half smile. "I thought you'd lost your mind, but maybe you found your heart." Preston nodded, eyes steady. "Best decision I ever made." Karen glanced around at the guests, at the quiet stares, the cautious acceptance. She didn't shrink. She never had. She smiled, then reached for Preston's hand, and together they stepped into the reception barn as husband and wife. This wedding wasn't about pleasing everyone. It was about standing together. The hush that fell over the guests wasn't forced. It was reverent. The warm glow of the Texas sunset lit the faces of everyone seated beneath the open sky as Preston took Karen's hands in his. His voice was soft, but it didn't tremble. It cracked once at the edges. "I didn't come to this altar looking for salvation," he began. "I came here afraid of love, afraid of being used, afraid of being wrong again." Karen blinked slowly, her eyes locked on his, hands steady in his grip. "I had wealth, I had land, but none of it meant anything," he said, swallowing thickly. "I didn't know how empty I'd become until you showed up in my life like a storm I never saw coming. You didn't chase me. You didn't flatter me. You challenged me." A single tear slipped down Preston's weathered cheek. "I needed that. I needed you." A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Preston kept his eyes only on her. "You didn't give in when I judged you. You didn't break when I doubted you. You stood tall. And through all my mistakes, God knows I made many, you never let me buy your love. You made me earn it." He drew in a breath and exhaled slowly, voice rough. "I once thought legacy was about bloodlines and business, but the real legacy is the kind of man I become because of the woman I stand beside." Karen's chin trembled. Her hands gripped his tighter. "Today," Preston said, "I vow not just to love you, but to protect what we've built. Trust, honesty, and that baby you're carrying." A ripple of emotion moved through the seated guests. "I don't need perfection. I need you. Just you." There was no loud applause, no dramatic gasp, just stillness, the kind that speaks. Karen stared up at him, her heart wide open, the same way she'd once stood alone and judged in a store aisle. Now she stood respected, cherished, and chosen. The officiant nodded, eyes misty. "Thank you, Preston." "Karen, your vows?" She breathed in, then prepared to speak. Karen turned slightly, one hand still in Preston's, the other resting on her small belly. Her soft white dress shimmered as the golden light of the evening danced across the lace. She smiled, but it wasn't the usual soft smile. This one was steady. Sure, it was the smile of a woman who had survived, stood tall, and finally been seen. She held Preston's gaze as she spoke. "When I met you, I didn't see a billionaire cowboy. I didn't see power or legacy. I saw a man pretending not to be broken." The crowd leaned in. "I've spent most of my life being looked down on, by men who thought I wasn't enough, or worse, who thought I wanted too much. But I never wanted anyone's bank account. I wanted peace, respect, a partner. She paused, voice calm but deep with emotion. You, Preston Horace, were the first man who tried to push me away because he was scared I'd be real. Some guests chuckled knowingly. Others nodded. I've had to carry myself through dark days. I've had to lift boxes while lifting my dignity in the face of judgment. So when you walked into my store, pretending to be just a man with questions and wide eyes, I didn't know you'd end up being the one I'd love. Her voice softened. But love doesn't mean losing myself. That's what I learned. I didn't bend. I didn't chase you. I waited for you to come correct, and you did. Preston's throat bobbed as he held back more tears. I wanted love, not riches. I wanted someone to see the value in my spirit, not the cost of my shoes. Today, I get to marry the man who stopped leading with fear and started walking with faith. She lifted her hand to his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. So I vow this. I will love you when the ranch is full and when it's dry. I will stand by you when your name brings praise and when it brings scandal. I will not worship your name. I will build a life with you, equal, rooted, real. There was no doubt. Karen had spoken her truth, and it had never sounded more like a vow. The moment Karen finished speaking, the entire ranch held its breath. Even the wind paused. Preston stared at her, not as a billionaire, not as a man trying to prove anything, but as someone humbled by the woman in front of him. Her strength, her honesty, her refusal to be bought or broken. He didn't ask for permission. He stepped forward, cupped her face with both hands and kissed her like a man who knew he didn't deserve her, but was grateful she chose him anyway. It wasn't a rushed kiss. It wasn't loud or showy. It was the kind that said, "We've been through the fire and we're still standing." Karen leaned into it. She didn't flinch. Her hands wrapped around the back of his neck, anchoring herself to the man who had once questioned her and now trusted her with his heart, his legacy, and his name. Their lips parted slowly. Karen's eyes opened, still locked on his. For a few seconds, nothing else mattered. Then someone in the crowd shouted, "Finally!" The guests laughed, clapped, and a few even wiped tears from their eyes. The sunset dipped lower, spilling orange and rose across the horizon behind them. Preston lowered his forehead to hers. "I'll never doubt you again," he whispered. Karen smirked. "You won't get the chance." They chuckled softly, the heat between them matched only by the cool breeze dancing through the trees. The kiss had sealed more than a wedding. It was an apology, a commitment, a thank you, a reminder, a promise that the battles they fought had not been in vain. Karen brushed a strand of hair from Preston's temple. "We still have work to do." He nodded. "But we're doing it together now." Together. That word had never meant so much. In the background, the jazz band picked up again. Guests took their seats, still whispering about how powerful her vows were, how raw that kiss had been, how different this wedding felt. Because it wasn't just a union, it was a victory. The silence broke like a wave crashing on the shore. Applause roared from the crowd, rising louder than the band, louder than the wind brushing the wheat fields. The guests stood to their feet, some whistling, others clapping with both hands above their heads. One man near the front, an old ranch hand, wiped his eyes and muttered, "About damn time." Karen looked out at the mix of people, Preston's corporate associates in tailored suits, her co-workers. From the Galleria still wearing mall badges, and neighbors from across town in denim and boots. People from different worlds. But today, they were cheering the same thing. Love that had survived suspicion. Trust rebuilt after betrayal. Strength that didn't bend even when hearts broke. Preston turned to the crowd and gave a small nod, humbled. His board members exchanged looks, some still skeptical, others beginning to smile. They may have doubted the match, but today there was no denying what they did witnessed. A man transformed, not by pressure, but by the right woman. In the middle row, Karen's aunt elbowed her cousin. "That girl made him wait. Made him work. That's how you do it." Meanwhile, one of the cowboys hollered, "Kiss her again, boss," drawing laughter and a few playful shouts from others. Even Tasha, seated far in the back, wearing a strange smile, stood up, clapped politely, then turned and left before anyone could notice. Her exit was quiet, fitting, but no one paid her any attention. All eyes were on the couple. Aaron, their son, only a few months old and resting in his stroller nearby, cooed as if adding his own baby cheer to the mix. One of Karen's friends leaned over and scooped him up, gently bouncing him in rhythm with the claps. The jazz band switched to something upbeat and warm. The ranch came alive. People swarmed forward to hug the newlyweds, some taking pictures, others offering real, heartfelt congratulations. Karen smiled at everyone, but her hands stayed wrapped in Preston's. The crowd wasn't just cheering a wedding. They were celebrating the fight it took to get there, the brokenness that healed, the doubts that didn't win, and the love that didn't flinch. The night unfolded gently under the wide Texas sky. String lights glowed across the ranch, casting a soft shimmer over. Hay bales turned into benches and tables lined with southern dishes. Laughter rose and fell like music, blending with the jazz band's mellow tune. Karen walked through the crowd, her gown brushing against the dirt path, her fingers still wrapped around Preston's hand. They had made it, not by force, not by luck, but by choice. Preston held her close as they danced slow under the stars. The two of them, older, wiser, changed, moved like no one was watching. But everyone was. Even little Aaron, now in his grandmother's arms, blinked sleepily at his parents and smiled, as if he knew this was history being written. "You feel that?" Preston whispered against Karen's temple. She leaned into him. "That peace?" He nodded. "Yeah, I fought boardrooms, rode bulls, made deals that scared grown men, but I've never fought for something like I did for you." Karen pulled back, her face tender and clear. "And I never gave in easily. I couldn't afford to. Not after what life handed me. That's why it had to be you," Preston said. "Because you didn't chase my name. You made me earn yours." The music slowed. Guests gathered around, cheering for another kiss. This time, Karen didn't hesitate. She kissed him like there were no wounds left, only healing. Love didn't rush them. It broke them, tested them, and rebuilt them. In the crowd, young women who once called Karen too hard or too proud now looked at her like a blueprint. She'd never needed a man to be whole, but when she finally chose one, she chose right. An announcer clinked a glass. To the Horaces. More cheers. Even the skeptical ones smiled now. Preston raised a toast. To every woman who knows her worth, and to every man willing to rise to it. Karen leaned into the mic, adding quietly, "To love that holds its ground." The night rolled on, dancing, laughter, honest joy. But one truth hung in the air, settled into every soul that showed up for that wedding. Love didn't just win. It worked. It waited. It proved itself. And when it showed up, for real, it stayed. Karen's contractions built steady through the morning at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. She gripped the rail of the hospital bed, jaw tight, breath controlled, eyes on the clock. Preston stood on her left in scrubs and a blue cap, fingers intertwined with hers. He didn't talk much. He counted with her. He breathed with her. He wiped her forehead when sweat stung her eyes. Dr. Lacey checked the monitor. "You're progressing well. Baby's heart rate looks strong." Karen nodded once. "Good. Let's finish." The nurse, Elena, coached from the foot of the bed. Deep breath in. Long push. "You've got this." Karen bore down, face set, back arched, a low sound breaking from her chest. Preston leaned close. "I'm right here." Another push. Another breath. The room narrowed to a rhythm. Coach, push, breathe. No drama, just work. The kind Karen knew well. "Crowning," Dr. Lacey said. "One more set and we meet your child." Karen's fingers crushed Preston's hand. He didn't flinch. "Take it," she said between breaths. "Take the pain with me." "I am," he answered. "Now," Elena urged. Karen pushed with everything left in her. A cry filled the room, sharp and new. Dr. Lacey lifted a small, wet bundle into the air and laughed softly. "You did it. He's here." Karen fell back against the pillows, chest heaving, eyes wide. "Let me see." The nurse placed the baby on her chest. Warm, slippery, real. Tiny hands opened and grabbed at nothing, searching. Karen cupped his back and whispered, "Hello, Aaron." He quieted at her voice, then let out another small cry like a protest and a greeting at once. She smiled through tears she hadn't planned to shed. "You're loud. Good." Preston's shoulders dropped. The years on his face seemed to lift as he leaned in, stunned, reverent. He kissed Karen's temple. "You're incredible." Elena wrapped a blanket around the baby and adjusted the hat. "Skin to skin for a few minutes. We'll weigh him next." Karen didn't look away. She traced Aaron's cheek with one finger. "Hi, son." The room settled. Machines hummed. Outside traffic moved. Life went on. But in this small space, everything had changed. A new heartbeat had joined the world. Strong, certain. Karen exhaled and closed her eyes for a second. "We made it." "Together," Preston said. Elena lifted Aaron gently. "Dad, ready?" Preston froze. The word hit him square in the chest. He nodded, palms open, hands shaking in a way they hadn't since his first rodeo. Elena guided the baby into his arms. The weight was nothing, yet it anchored him like 1,000 acres. Aaron blinked up at him, eyes dark and curious. His mouth made a small O, then settled. Preston stared. The rancher who had steered markets and storms and boardrooms suddenly had no words. "Support the head," Elena reminded softly. He did, hand cradling the tiny skull, thumb brushing the soft cap. Aaron's fingers fanned and closed around Preston's knuckle. Reflex, grip like a promise. Something cracked open inside him. A tear rolled down his cheek, cutting through the stubble. He didn't wipe it. Another followed. He let them fall. Karen watched from the bed, a tired smile pulling at her lips. "You okay?" Preston laughed once, the sound broken and bright. "No, yes. I don't even know." He lifted Aaron a little closer, forehead touching the baby's hat. "I waited a lifetime to meet you." Elena checked the monitors and gave them space. Dr. Lacey finished notes and stepped back with a nod. Preston swayed, an old instinct from holding foals, now changed forever. "I thought money was weight," he whispered to Aaron. "Turns out weight is 8 pounds and some ounces, and a heartbeat that wrecks your pride." Karen chuckled. "He owns you already." "He does?" Preston kissed the baby's brow. "You hear me, son? I love you. No conditions, no fear." Aaron fussed, a small sound, then settled again, cheek pressed to Preston's chest. The thin hospital gown couldn't muffle the thud beneath, steady, protective. Preston looked at Karen. "Thank you." "For what?" "For doing the hardest thing a person can do and letting me be here to witness it." Karen's eyes softened. "We did this." He nodded, swallowing. "We did." The nurse returned. "Let's weigh him and check measurements." She took Aaron for a moment, worked quickly, called out numbers, logged them, then placed him back on Karen's chest for another stretch of skin to skin. Preston sat on the edge of the bed, one hand on Karen's shoulder, the other resting over Aaron's back. He had never felt richer. Later, when the room quieted, Karen propped herself higher against the pillows. Aaron slept in the bassinet beside the bed, wrapped tight, chest rising and falling like a tiny machine set to peace. Preston poured water from the pitcher and held the cup to her lips. She drank, then set it aside. Her voice was low, sure. "Listen to me." He faced her, alert. "Our son is not a headline. He's not an answer to your board. He's not a photo op. He's not a leverage point in any room you walk into." Preston nodded once. "Agreed." "He will know who he is before he knows what you own," she continued. "He will learn to say please and thank you. He will visit his grandparents. He will help clean his room. He will hear no and learn why." Preston's mouth twitched. "I can handle no." "You better," she said, a hint of humor cutting through the steel. "He'll know faith and kindness. He'll see his parents work through hard things without quitting. He'll learn that respect is given freely, not bought." Preston leaned forward. "You have my word." "He'll know love," she finished. "Not wealth alone." The words hung there, simple, final. Preston took a breath. "Done." Karen held his gaze. "I mean it, Preston. I won't raise a boy who thinks money replaces character. I won't raise a man who hides behind his last name." "You won't," he said. "Not while I'm here." "You are here," she said, softer now. "Stay that way." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. The monitors beeped lightly, a metronome for new vows made in a hospital room instead of under an arch. From the bassinet, Aaron grunted and shifted. Karen smiled and stood the best she could, steadying herself. Preston lifted the baby and passed him to her with the care of a man handling a rare glass. She tucked Aaron close and kissed his nose. "Love first," she whispered to him. "Everything else after." Preston watched mother and child, a picture he would keep in his mind for the rest of his days. "Love first," he echoed. They had a plan, not a complicated one. The kind that lasts. Visiting hours dipped into the quiet stretch of evening. The nurse dimmed the lights. The city hum beyond the window softened. Karen rocked Aaron, and Preston sat close, elbows on knees, eyes tracing, both their faces like he could memorize them in one sitting. "You said love first," he began. "I agree. But there's more I want him to carry." Karen looked up. "Say it." "Strength," Preston said. "Not the kind that stomps, the kind that stands, the kind you live every day." She tilted her head. "From me?" "From you," he answered. "You lift more than boxes. You lift your name. You lift your mind. You lift other people when they forget who they are. He needs to see that." She smirked. "So does his father." "I'm learning," Preston said. "A little late. But I'm learning." He shifted closer. "He'll learn that apologies are not weakness, that men keep their word, that fear doesn't get the last say." Karen nodded slowly. "Add humility." "Added," he said. "Humility, discipline, service, and joy, because this house will laugh." She glanced at the clock. "This house will also sleep. Eventually," he said. They shared a small grin. It felt like the first inside joke of a new chapter. Preston pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Birth certificate forms. I checked the boxes we discussed. No surprises. Your name stays your name. His middle name is yours to choose." Karen read quickly. "Middle name Elijah." Preston paused. "After my stable hand?" "After the man who told you the truth when you didn't want to hear it," she said. "He's family." Preston nodded, eyes bright. "Elijah it is." He signed, then handed her the pen. She signed next, slow and deliberate. 2 signatures set a path no contract could reach. Aaron fussed. Preston stood and took him, patting gently until the baby settled. "I've got you." Karen watched him sway and hum off-key. She had never pictured this exact scene, but she recognized the feeling. Safety, respect, a partner who showed up. He handed Aaron back and brushed a thumb across Karen's cheek. "Love first. Strength from you. Every day we choose both." "Every day," she agreed. The plan was simple. Live it. 2 weeks later, the ranch woke to a clear blue morning. Karen wore a soft wrap and held Aaron against her chest in a sling. Preston kept one hand at her back and the other steadying the baby's head, more out of instinct than need. "Slow," he said. She smiled. "I'm fine." They stepped off the porch and onto the packed dirt path that led toward the south pasture. The air smelled like hay and sun-warmed cedar. A few hands tipped their hats. Elijah jogged over, eyes shining. "May I?" he asked. Karen lifted the sling flap so he could see. Elijah's face softened. "Welcome home, little man." He touched Aaron's foot with the back of his knuckle, then looked up. "You two did good. Couldn't have done it without your mouth," Preston joked. "You're right about that," Elijah shot back, grinning. They continued to the big oak near the pond. Karen paused to catch her breath. Preston spread a blanket on the grass and helped her sit. Aaron shifted and squeaked. She kissed his forehead and tucked him in tighter. Preston pointed across the water. "That ridge catches the first light. When he's older, I'll bring him there at sunup, teach him to listen before he speaks." Karen arched a brow. "Start with sleeping through the night." "Fair," he said. They ate simple sandwiches from a paper bag and watched a heron land at the far edge of the pond. Karen leaned into Preston's shoulder. "This is good." "It is." He glanced toward the east gate, where a simple wooden marker stood under a stand of mesquite, the place where Jolene rested. Karen followed his gaze. He shifted, unsure. She reached for his hand. "We'll take him there when I'm stronger," she said. "We'll tell him the truth about your past. All of it, with respect." Preston exhaled. "Thank you." Aaron stirred and opened his mouth, searching. Karen adjusted and let him feed. Preston looked away to give them privacy, pride flickering across his face as steady as the light on the pond. "This land has seen me alone," he said. "It's time it learns us." "It already has," Karen replied. "We're here." A breeze moved the grass. Aaron sighed, full and content. They sat in the open, not performing for anyone, not proving a point, simply being a family on a Texas morning that asked for nothing but presence. Night returned them to the porch that had held so many versions of Preston: boy, boss, broken man, and now father. String lights traced the railing. Crickets sang their endless chorus. Karen rocked slowly with Aaron against her chest, his tiny breaths warm through the wrap. Preston set 2 mugs of tea on the table and settled beside her. He didn't reach for big words. He reached for her hand. She laced her fingers with his. "Same sky," she said. "Different life," he answered. They sat quiet, watching constellations they couldn't name. Karen thought of that first night under this same sky, when passion had swallowed caution and trust was still a distant idea. She remembered the fight, the doubt, the slap, the rain at her door. She remembered the way he changed, quietly, stubbornly, day after day, until trust wasn't a theory. It was habit. Preston watched the curve of her profile, the steady way she held their son, the strength that never needed noise. He thought of the man he had been and the man he was now. The gap humbled him. "Thank you for not raising him alone," he said softly. "Thank you for not trying to buy forgiveness," she replied. "You earned it." Aaron stirred, let out a small sound, then drifted again. Karen kissed his hair. Preston tucked the blanket closer around both of them. He looked out over the dark fields. Fences mended, crews steady, calendars full again. The board had quieted. Investors returned. None of it felt like the prize. This did. Karen squeezed his hand. "Tomorrow we'll walk farther." "Tomorrow," he agreed. A shooting star flared and faded. Neither wished. They didn't need to. Karen shifted, resting her head on his shoulder. "Full circle," she murmured. "Full circle," he echoed. They stayed like that a long time, the porch light a soft halo, the night wide and kind. No speeches, no applause. Just a woman who kept her self-worth, a man who learned to trust, and the child who turned their love into something you could hold. When they finally rose to go inside, Preston opened the door and waited. As Karen passed, he touched the small of her back, a simple gesture that said what vows and rings had already sworn. Home. Together. Always. Thank you for spending time with Karen, Preston, and baby Aaron. If this story moved you, your support keeps these long-form narratives alive on this channel. Here's what you can do right now to help. Like this video if you felt the emotions in their journey. Comment with the lesson you're taking away. Do you agree with Karen's rule, love first? Share this with someone who needs a story about second chances that are earned. Subscribe to Mr. Peterson Long Stories so you never miss a new release. Turn on notifications. New stories drop weekly. 2 quick engagement prompts for you. 2. What should Aaron learn first from his parents, discipline, or creativity? Your likes and comments help more viewers find these stories. Your shares bring new people into our community. Your subscription tells me to keep writing honest tales about dignity, trust, and lasting love. If you want a sequel showing Aaron's first year on the ranch and how Karen balances motherhood with her own dreams, say year 1 in the comments. If you want a prequel about Preston before he met Karen, say before Karen. Your voice shapes what I write next. Thank you for being here. If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe and share it. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Final CTA, if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes love is worth fighting for. Like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Peterson Long Stories.